Chapter 621. Under the Tree of World, Feng Zichen was facing the 5 Chaos Demon Gods at the primordial chaos level. Instead of showing any fear, he was unusually arrogant. He pointed at the Chaos Demon Gods with one hand and said that they were no match for him. He was extremely arrogant and did not take them seriously at all. It was as if he was not facing the 5 high and mighty Chaos Demon Gods, but 5 Tom, Dick, and Harry. You. When such arrogant words reached the ears of the 5 Chaos Demon Gods, they were so angry that they were speechless. I have been in the chaos for many years, but I have never seen such an arrogant junior like you. Kid, let me see what you can do. Let me see what gives you the confidence to look down on the 5 of us. After a long time, the Chaos Demon Gods finally calmed down. They were angry and directly attacked Feng Zichen. Rumble. With a thought from the demon god of chaos, heaven and earth changed accordingly. The great path appeared, the Dharma was faintly discernible, and endless visions appeared, evolving into all kinds of mysterious superpowers. They blasted toward Feng Zichen with overwhelming force. Boom! It was as if the sea of stars had exploded and the world had collapsed. Dazzling light burst out and almost drowned everything. Heaven and earth lost their color, and only a terrifying power swept across everything as if it was going to destroy the past, present, and future. Come on then. However, Feng Zichen was not afraid at all. Hongmeng Daozhong Dai. Feng Zichen grabbed the Hongmeng Daozhong and slammed it toward the superpowers that were coming toward him. Clang. The sound of the bell was faint and boundless. It was like the sound of the great path and contained supreme power. It had the ability to destroy all Dharma and superpowers. Rumble. Endless sound waves burst out and directly destroyed everything. In an instant, everything ceased to exist. Time, space, great path, and Dharma. At this moment, all of them lost their meaning. All that could be seen was the boundless aura of Hongmeng. Boom! The chi of Hongmeng surged and surged like a raging ocean. Boundless waves surged violently toward the 5 chaotic demon gods, attempting to drown them. Wherever the Hongmeng chi passed, the divine powers of the 5 chaotic demon gods were submerged, devoured, and became a part of the Hongmeng chi, making the Hongmeng chi even more powerful. Not good. It's Hongmeng's chi. But seeing the ocean-like Hongmeng aura surging toward them in a more powerful manner after devouring their superpowers, the 5 Chaos Demon Gods' expressions changed drastically. At this moment, they couldn't care less about their reputation. Before the aura of Hongmeng rushed over, they hurriedly hid in all directions. Boom, 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 the aura of Hongmeng was vast and mighty. It wreaked havoc in the void for a long time before it gradually subsided. As the aura of Hongmeng retreated, everything around them changed. The void was gone. Even the last day's domain that the heavenly Tao had specially set up to protect the Tree of World was completely assimilated by the surging aura of Hongmeng. After a long time, the Tree of World once again appeared in front of everyone in the primordial world. A huge divine tree stood between heaven and earth like a pillar of heaven and earth, holding up heaven and earth. Great and shocking. The sudden change completely alarmed the great divine powers and the chaos demon gods who were fighting on the other side. At this moment, they seemed to be shocked by the greatness of the Tree of World. They simultaneously stopped what they were doing and temporarily stopped fighting. The Tree of World? Is this your real goal? No wonder you guys were so crazy and reckless when you attacked. It turns out that your goal was to destroy the great desolate world. The great divine powers weren't fools. After seeing the Tree of World and thinking of the strange actions of the Chaos Demon Gods, they naturally understood the other party's true intentions. What a good move! If His Majesty Ziwei hadn't been more skillful and ambushed under the Tree of World in advance, the primordial world would have been in danger today. Thinking of this, everyone couldn't help but feel a lingering fear. If Great Emperor Ziwei hadn't been there, the consequences would have been unimaginable. After figuring this out, the powerful divines began to have misgivings and stopped fighting with the chaos demonic god. Instead, they began to confront him. They couldn't fight anymore. If they were careless, the aftermath of the battle would exceed the limit that Pangu's incarnation could withstand. Then, The primordial world would really be in danger. The great divine powers were worried about the primordial world and didn't want to continue fighting. As for the chaos demon gods, they were worried about the changes at the Tree of World and chose to wait and see. For a moment, both sides reached a strange consensus. They looked at the Tree of World together. Cough, cough, cough. Accompanied by a series of violent coughs, the 5 chaos demon gods crawled out of the void in tattered clothes. Their battered figures no longer had a trace of their previous arrogance. Junior, I have underestimated you. You have mastered the power of Hongmeng. How amazing! However, do you think you can defeat us like this? You should know that there are 5 of us. But you're alone. Are you really that confident to fight against 5 of us? Perhaps it was because he had been defeated by a junior and lost face, but the chaos demon god's words were inevitably tinged with shame and anger. However, in addition to shame and anger, there was also some greed in the chaos demon god's tone. That was the Qi of Hongmeng, the legendary power that was comparable to the power of the Great Path. If they could master it, then perhaps they would be able to rely on it to attain a realm comparable to Pangu or even surpass Pangu and attain an unprecedented realm of the Great Path. When they thought up to here, the chaos demon gods were excited to the point their bodies trembled, and their gazes towards Feng Zichen grew even more greedy. If it wasn't for them being afraid of his formidable strength, they would have probably pounced over directly and seized the Hongmeng Daozhong. Can you do it or not? Didn't all of you try it earlier? Your current attitude is the most powerful answer I can give you. Feng Zichen didn't take the threat of the chaos demon gods seriously at all. The reason he dared to be so arrogant was naturally because he was extremely confident that he could easily suppress the 5 chaos demon gods. Especially since the last day's domain had vanished, Feng Zichen was even more confident. Feng Zichen's words almost infuriated the chaos demon gods, and they wished for nothing more than to tear Feng Zichen apart on the spot. However, they didn't dare attack rashly out of consideration for the Hongmeng Daozhong, and they could only forcefully suppress the flames of rage in their hearts. The aggrievance in their hearts was obvious. That aggrieved expression of wanting to attack yet not daring to attack could be said to be extremely brilliant. Very good. I hope you'll be able to maintain this arrogance in the future. In the end, the chaos demon god seemed to be unwilling to give up for the sake of saving face, and he spoke ruthlessly. Feng Zichen displayed extreme disdain towards this. The chaos demon god, who was already furious, was completely unable to suppress the flames of rage in his heart after being provoked by Feng Zichen. They'd broken through his defenses. Bastard! The chaos demon god was furious to the extreme, and he attacked with all his might towards Feng Zichen. Without a sound, a giant hand reached down. In an instant, the entire world turned dark because the hand was so huge that it covered the entire sky, squeezed the void, and covered the land where the Tree of World was located. The sect master attacked with one hand covering the sky. A large hand surrounded by chaotic demonic aura covered everything, turning day into night. It was boundless. He wanted to grab the Tree of World and freeze time. The river of time trembled and stopped for him. Everything withered. The boundless starry sky was cold and silent. Everything trembled under this hand. Boom! The order of heaven and earth collapsed, and the rules dissipated. Only a black hand reached into this world and became the only one. Behind this large hand were 5 overbearing demonic shadows. Their bodies filled the entire sky, and they exuded a terrifying aura. The 5 of them shouted in unison and launched their strongest attack towards Feng Zichen together. Boom! In an instant, infinite laws appeared and filled the sky with boundless power. As if the sky was falling, they pressed down on Feng Zichen. Good timing! Feng Zichen was fearless. In the face of such a powerful attack, he still dared to face it head-on. At this moment, he had invincible confidence. Even if he had the chance to interrupt the other party's magical power and prevent the attack from taking shape. But he didn't do so. Instead, he gave the other party enough time to form this unimaginable attack. Feng Zichen wanted to defeat the Chaos Fiend God in his strongest state to shatter their pride and confidence. And all of this confidence came from his trump card that was beyond imagination. Boom. When the Chaos Fiend God's magical power was fully formed, it pressed down on him. Feng Zichen moved. He punched out. The fist mark that illuminated the past, present, and future rose up, roaring and resplendent. There was a loud boom. His fist mark pierced through time and space and collided with the majestic hand of murderous aura. The next moment, the sky collapsed and the earth cracked. Immortals cried and demons howled. All kinds of strange phenomena appeared, shining in the primordial world and shaking the universe. Bang! After the ultimate move, heaven and earth froze for a moment. Then, there was an earth-shattering fluctuation, and endless brilliance bloomed. The result was, the Chaos Fiend God was no match for Feng Zichen's power. The huge black hand of murderous aura was shattered by his fist mark and exploded in the void. The murderous aura of chaos fell from the void like rain. It was extremely shocking. Of course, the shock was not without a price. If the murderous aura of chaos fell into the primordial world, it would inevitably cause an extremely bad effect and give birth to all kinds of strange things. Clatter. At the critical moment, Feng Zichen's body suddenly emitted a brilliant brilliance. Mysterious ripples spread from his body and turned into a bright rain of light. It spread toward the primordial world and met the murderous aura of chaos. Sizzle. No one knew where the light rain came from. It seemed to be the nemesis of the murderous aura of chaos. As soon as it met, it canceled each other out. Soon, the murderous aura of chaos disappeared under the light rain. However, the brilliance on Feng Zichen's body did not dim. Instead, it became brighter. At the same time, the ripples under his feet became more mysterious. Endless mysterious runes appeared and disappeared. Like the great Tao, they spread toward the Chaos Fiend God. Set off by the mysterious brilliance, Feng Zichen's figure became more and more ethereal. His whole body emitted a mysterious aura, as if he was the way of heaven. Rumble. The fist mark was bright and penetrated everything. After breaking the murderous aura hand, it hit the Chaos Fiend God. After the punch, bright divine blood splashed and fell into the primordial world, turning into a big river. With just one blow, the Chaos Fiend God was injured. Way of heaven. So, this is why you are so confident? The indelible way injury spread in his body, causing the aura of the Chaos Fiend God to weaken. At this time, they finally understood why Feng Zichen was so arrogant. That was way of heaven. With just Feng Zichen's strength, he would definitely not be able to resist the 5 of them. However, with the way of heaven, even if 50 of them joined forces, they would not be a match for Feng Zichen. With the support of the way of heaven, Feng Zichen easily obtained the power to defeat the 5 of them. Don't you think it's a little too late to understand now? Feng Zichen laughed and said, he did not know what these Chaos Fiend gods were thinking. They actually dared to touch the world tree at this time. How ridiculous! Back then, the demon ancestor Rahu dared to attack the world tree because the way of heaven was not in the primordial world. But now, with the retreat of the Chaos Fiend gods, the way of heaven had returned to the primordial world. Attacking the world tree at this time, was the way of heaven really a vegetarian? Previously, they might have been able to hide from the way of heaven's perception with various methods. However, with the disappearance of the last day's domain, how could the way of heaven not notice that there was a problem with the world tree? It would definitely come here personally. At that time, under the gaze of the way of heaven, no matter how miraculous the concealment technique was, it would lose its effect. Earlier, Feng Zichen had utilized the Hongmeng Daozhong to destroy the last day's domain for the sake of drawing the attention of the way of heaven so that everyone would be completely exposed before the way of heaven. Just like that. On what basis could they be so arrogant? The facts were just as Feng Zichen had expected. After it saw the Chaos Fiend gods intend to destroy the world tree, the way of heaven was extremely furious. It immediately used Feng Zichen to teach the Chaos Fiend gods a lesson. This was precisely the reason why Feng Zichen was able to defeat the 5 Chaos Fiend gods. The energy of the way of heaven really is formidable. as expected of a special existence that inherited a portion of the strength of us 3,000 Chaos Fiend gods. You've won this time. But next time, you won't be so lucky. They were clearly aware that they had no chance of winning after the appearance of the Way of Heaven, so the Chaos Fiend gods didn't hesitate and immediately intended to leave. However, they'd finally encountered an opportunity to annihilate the Chaos Fiend gods with great difficulty, so how could Feng Zichen allow them to do as they wished? Suppress. With a command in his heart, Feng Zichen mobilized the energy of the Way of Heaven and intended to suppress the Chaos Fiend gods. Today, no matter what, he had to kill all of them and deal with a great calamity in the primordial world. However, the Chaos Fiend gods were obviously much smarter than he'd imagined. When they noticed that the situation was bad, the Chaos Fiend gods suddenly made a shocking move. Chapter 622. Pardon. At the same time, the 5 Chaos Demon gods were vaporized and turned into the purest origin of heaven and earth. Rumble. The mighty power of the Way of Heaven fell, but it encountered a power of the same origin as itself. For a moment, the mighty power of the Way of Heaven and Earth resonated with the origin of heaven and earth, rendering Feng Zichen's attack completely ineffective. The mighty power that suppressed everything fell, but it passed through the body of the Chaos Demon gods and did not cause any harm to them. Interesting. However, you are dreaming if you think you can escape from me with this. Feng Zichen was not discouraged by the failure of his attack. If the Chaos Demon gods could be dealt with so easily, they would not be the biggest threat in the untainted land. Refine. With a thought, Feng Zichen manipulated the power of the Way of Heaven and condensed a huge tripod cauldron in the void, absorbing the origin of heaven and earth that the 5 Chaos Demon gods had turned into. This was a supreme great magic power. The furnace of the Way of Heaven. Since the 5 Chaos Demon gods had the intention to turn into the origin of heaven and earth, how could Feng Zichen not fulfill their wish? Therefore, he immediately used the supreme great magic power, the furnace of the Way of Heaven and Earth, to envelop them and try to refine them to help them become a part of heaven and earth. Rumble. The furnace of the Way of Heaven rotated and boundless Tao fire rose. Yin and Yang were the firewood and the Dharma was the fire. They turned into boundless refining power and surged toward the origin of heaven and earth that the Chaos Demon gods had turned into in an attempt to refine them. Great magic power. But all of this ends here. In the furnace of the Way of Heaven, the 5 Chaos Demon gods were not afraid at all in the face of the refining power that was surging toward them. Instead, they were unusually relaxed. It was as if they were not in the furnace of the Way of Heaven, but some other sacred ground. Hearing this, Feng Zichen frowned, and an ominous premonition arose in his heart. Immediately he didn't dare to hesitate. He wanted to activate the power of the Way of the Heaven to the greatest extent so that he could refine all 5 Chaos Demon gods and completely cut off their vitality. However, before Feng Zichen could make a move, the origin of heaven and earth formed by the 5 Chaos Demon gods in the heavenly Tao furnace suddenly fused into one with the help of the refining power. Boom! In an instant, an extremely powerful aura erupted, shaking the universe and shattering the heavenly Tao furnace. At the same time, in the distant outer realm, in the most mysterious place, the will of chaos slowly awakened. Rumble! An extremely ancient and mighty power suddenly rose from the chaos and flew towards the untainted world at high speed. The chaos demonic god was summoning the chaos will. This was the most powerful life-saving means given to the chaos demon gods by the will of chaos. The more chaos demon gods there were, the stronger the power they could summon would be. If 3,000 chaos fiend celestials were to gather, they could even stand shoulder to shoulder with the great Tao. At this moment, in order to deal with Feng Zichen, the 5 chaos demon gods joined forces and borrowed an extremely strong power from the chaos will. This power was strong enough to destroy everything. Of course, that was under normal circumstances. After all, this place was the untainted land and was protected by the great god Pangu. Any external power would be weakened by the great god Pangu after entering the untainted land. In other words, The power that the 5 chaos demon gods borrowed from the chaos will might be strong enough at the beginning, but after entering the untainted land, it would be good if they could retain 1% of their power. However, the extreme sublimation of power in an instant was enough to catch Feng Zichen off guard and cause some flaws in his blockade. After the power of the chaos will descended, the strength of the 5 chaos demon gods soared countless times in an instant. Rumble. Unparalleled power exploded, and the furnace of heavenly Tao shattered, revealing an indomitable figure. Violent power poured out of his body and swept everything, shattering all the means that Feng Zichen used to seal time and space. Go! Almost without hesitation, the 5 chaos demon gods directly fled to the chaos beyond the sky after breaking Feng Zichen's blockade. But it was impossible to fight, because no matter what, they could not win. In the untainted land, the way of heaven represented invincibility. No one or anything could compete with the way of heaven. Even the chaos demon gods were no exception. And it was because of this that the chaos demon gods fled to the chaos beyond the sky without looking back after breaking Feng Zichen's blockade. The gap was too big. Even if they were supported by the power of the chaos will, it was still the same. Now, the reason why the chaos demon gods could escape was that their strength had increased too quickly and did not give Feng Zichen any time to react. This gave them a chance to escape. If they delayed for a while and waited for Feng Zichen to react, it would be difficult for them to escape under the power of the way of heaven. Want to leave? Stay! After a moment of astonishment, Feng Zichen snapped out of his daze. Seeing that the chaos demon celestial was about to escape, he couldn't care about anything else. He summoned the primordial chaos Tao bell and blasted it at the chaos demon celestial. Dang, the melodious sound of the bell rang. It was like the funeral sound of ancient times. It set off purple waves. It destroyed all laws and destroyed everything. At this moment, under the activation of the power of the way of heaven, the power of Hongmeng Daozhong was fully displayed by Feng Zichen. In an instant, an endless amount of primordial qi appeared. At this moment, the entire world turned purple. Everything was drowned out and could no longer be seen. It was a vast expanse. When everything was over, Hongmeng Daozhong retracted the Hongmeng qi. The scene that appeared in front of him was shocking. Time, void, great Tao, law, everything no longer existed. It had completely turned into a state of nothingness. Of course, the traces of the chaos demon gods had also disappeared without a trace. No one knew if they had escaped or if they had been swallowed by the Hongmeng qi. So powerful, even Feng Zichen was shocked by the scene in front of him. Since Hongmeng Daozhong had been promoted to a Khanate cardinal treasure, this was the first time he had fully activated his power. It was indeed shocking. It could be said to be ridiculously powerful. The space that had been drowned by the Hongmeng qi had completely turned into a state of nothingness. It could not even be repaired. One could see. After the Hongmeng qi disappeared, the power of heaven and earth tried to repair the broken void. However, something shocking happened. No matter how powerful the power of heaven and earth was, when it came into contact with the broken void, it would all be assimilated and turned into a state of nothingness. Hongmeng Daozhong's attack had almost caused permanent damage to the primordial world. It could not be healed. It was too powerful. But this is good as well. After he recovered from his initial shock, Feng Zichen spoke in a slightly relaxed manner. Even though Hongmeng Daozhong's attack had caused permanent damage to the primordial world, it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. After all, this was where the world tree resided. The space here had completely transformed into a state of nothingness, and it could be said to have provided a natural layer of defense for the world tree. Even the energy of heaven and earth would be assimilated by it, let alone experts with great divine abilities. Every single one of them would probably die. With such a force protecting the world tree, it was simply countless times stronger than the last day's domain. Even though it wasn't completely safe, it was probably very difficult for a situation like this to occur. With a plan in his heart, Feng Zichen stopped paying attention to the broken void, and he converged his attention onto Hongmeng Daozhong instead. As for the broken void, he allowed it to exist to deter those with ulterior motives. Tisk tsk, Tiske. This group of Chaos Fiend Celestials really fled quickly. Feng Zichen couldn't help but speak with slight disappointment as he glanced at the interior of Hongmeng Daozhong. Their ball of quintessence of the heavens and the earth was floating there silently while emanating boundless profundity. It was the quintessence of the heavens and the earth that the 5 Chaos Fiend Celestials had transformed into. Unfortunately, it wasn't complete, and it was only around half of it. Earlier, even though Feng Zichen's reaction was extremely swift, the Chaos Fiend Celestials had still taken the initiative in the end. So, when Feng Zichen made a move, he was half a step too late, and he wasn't able to kill all of them. However, he wasn't completely without gains. Hongmeng Daozhong's attack had forcefully severed the bodies of the Chaos Fiend Celestials, and it had forcefully left behind half of their quintessence. In other words, even though the Chaos Fiend Celestials hadn't perished, their strength had been directly reduced by around half, and it would take an unknown amount of time and price to fully recover. It's not completely without gains. At the very least, this quintessence is enough for Hongmeng Daozhong to improve by a small step again. With a thought, Feng Zichen directly activated Hongmeng Daozhong to devour the quintessence of the heavens and the earth. Currently, Hongmeng Daozhong was only a lower-grade innate true treasure. Presumably, after devouring the quintessence of the heavens and the earth, it would definitely improve by another level and become a middle-grade innate true treasure. A mere lower-grade innate true treasure already had such powerful power. What would it be like when it was upgraded to a middle-grade innate true treasure? Feng Zichen was looking forward to it. At this very moment, don't you have anything to say? After putting away Hongmeng Daozhong, Feng Zichen suddenly spoke to the void beside him. Ha! As expected, I can't hide it from you. With a chuckle, a figure quietly emerged from the void. It was the mysterious man who wanted to destroy the Tree of World. Previously, although the Chaos Demon Celestial had come to save him, in fact, he had come to save the innate true treasure in his hands. Saving him was just a matter of convenience. However, as the situation deteriorated rapidly, the Chaos Demon Celestial could not even protect himself, let alone save him. Therefore, as the war broke out, the Chaos Demon Celestial could not care about the mysterious man at all. Logically speaking, without the protection of the Chaos Demon Celestial, the mysterious man should have died in the aftermath of the battle between Feng Zichen and the Chaos Demon Celestial. After all, a battle between Origin Immortals was far beyond the reach of a half-step Origin Immortal. However, he did not expect the mysterious man to use some unknown means to attach himself to the Tree of World. Therefore, not only did he survive the aftermath of the battle, but he also survived until the end. If not for the fact that Feng Zichen was the master of the Tree of World and had sufficient perception of him, he would have been fooled by him and escaped. However, the mysterious man was unlucky to have dared to play tricks on the Tree of World right under Feng Zichen's nose. Didn't he just run right into the muzzle of the gun? I really don't understand. Is the temptation of becoming a saint so great? How could it cause you to fall so low? You must know that with your talent, fellow Taoist, you'll be able to ascend to the supreme Origin Tao realm one day. Why do you have to commit such evil acts for the elusive position of a saint? Looking at the mysterious man in front of him, Feng Zichen lamented bitterly. With his eyesight, he could naturally see that the mysterious man had not been possessed by the Chaos Demon Celestial. That was why Feng Zichen was puzzled. To be able to reach half-step Origin Immortal through hard work alone was proof of his great talent. At the very least, it would not be difficult for him to become a Chaos Daluo Jinxian. Then what was the reason for such a promising figure to be willing to risk universal condemnation and work with the Chaos Demon Celestial to destroy the primordial world for the sake of a position restricted by the Heavenly Tao? Wouldn't it be great to be an unrestrained Chaos Daluo Jinxian? What do you know, fellow Taoist? It's not difficult for the poor way to reach Origin Immortal, but what about the realms above that? There are 12 levels of Origin Immortal, and each level is like ascending to the heavens. If she only relies on hard work, I'm afraid the poor way will never reach the peak of Origin Immortal in her lifetime, let alone the infinite Tao realm. That's why the poor way needs a position of saint. As long as she becomes a saint, with the help of the heavenly Tao, the poor Wei will have a chance to set foot in the infinite Tao realm and the more mysterious realms above it, let alone the peak of origin immortal. Do you understand now, fellow Taoist? The mysterious man seemed to have thought of the future prospects and spoke with some fervor. Hearing this, Feng Zichen was a little speechless. What this person said might not be unreasonable. Although becoming a saint had all kinds of inconveniences, there were more benefits. Just as the mysterious man had said, with the help of the heavenly Tao, it was easier for a saint to reach a higher realm than a primordial Daluo Jingxian. If not for this, how could the three pure ones and the others be willing to become saints and be manipulated by the heavenly Tao? Obviously. That was because the benefits of becoming a saint were far greater than the price he had to pay. But this was not the reason why he betrayed the primordial world. If it was for strength, if he could betray the primordial world, then this world was not far from destruction. Therefore, this person's actions could not be tolerated. Moreover, this person thought, wasn't it a little too much? Now, he had not even reached primordial chaos, and he was already thinking about higher realms. Wasn't he thinking too much? The most taboo thing about cultivation was to bite off more than one could chew. This person must have been fooled by the chaos demon god. Otherwise, why would he think so much for no reason? He had endured hundreds of millions of years of bitter cultivation, and now he suddenly betrayed the primordial world. Feng Zichen did not believe that no one had instigated it. But these were not important anymore. No matter what the reason was, since he dared to betray the primordial world, there was no reason for him to continue existing. Chapter 6:23. Fellow Taoist, now that things have come to this, let me reveal your true face. As he spoke, Feng Zichen stretched out his hand and grabbed the mysterious man. He was about to break his disguise and completely erase his existence. However, seeing that Feng Zichen's magical power was about to reach him, the mysterious man suddenly smiled strangely. Then his body collapsed. Like smoke, in the blink of an eye, he disappeared from the world. Ha! Fellow Taoist Ziwei, you have won this round, but the contest between us is not over yet. Next time, I hope you are still so confident. The wisps of smoke dissipated, and there was no trace of the mysterious man. Only the faint sound of Tao kept echoing in the air, as a trace of the mysterious man's existence. Self-Taoification? You are quite decisive. However, do you think I can't find you like this? How ridiculous! Although Feng Zichen was a little shocked by the disappearance of the mysterious man, he was not too surprised. As a great magician in the ancient times, how could he be suppressed so easily? He must have countless trump cards. Taoification. It meant returning to heaven and earth. Under normal circumstances, a living creature who chose to Taoification must have completely fallen. However, the mysterious man chose to Taoification at this moment. Of course, his purpose was not to commit suicide, but to escape from Feng Zichen and hide his identity to facilitate his future plans. Unlike the Chaos Fiend god, the mysterious man was a native of the untainted land. He had lived in the untainted land for countless years and had even heard about the Tao in the Purple Cloud Palace. Over the endless years, he had hidden countless secret moves and trump cards. And these trump cards and secret moves were enough to ensure that after his death, he could return to the untainted land as quickly as possible. Of course, there was no perfect magical power in the world. Perhaps someone could block his resurrection. Therefore, in order to prevent accidents from happening, after being suppressed by Feng Zichen, he saw that there was no hope of escaping, so he directly killed himself and Taoified between heaven and earth. In this way, even if he died in his own hands, he would not have to worry about accidents. In terms of effect, this method was indeed very good. At the very least, Feng Zichen had no ability to stop the mysterious man from Taoifying. How rich was the mysterious man's source energy? He chose to Taoification and return his origin to heaven and earth. Heaven and earth could not be more happy, so how could it refuse? At this time, if someone dared to interfere with the process of the mysterious man's Taoification, they would be against heaven and earth. The outcome, one could imagine. It was because of this that Feng Zichen would not forcibly interrupt the mysterious man's human transformation. The price of forming karma with the world was too great. From a certain point of view, this kind of escape method could be said to be unsolvable. This was using one's own origin to buy one's life back then. When Feng Zichen was sealed by Donghuang Tai, he had used this technique to transform the heavens and the earth and escaped from the seal. Until today. That had long that. He didn't expect that there would be someone who used his methods back then to escape from his hands. Fate was truly making fools of people. However, although this method could be said to be unsolvable, the price to pay for using this method was beyond imagination. One had to die once and completely disperse all of one's innate origin. This was using hundreds of millions of years of bitter cultivation in exchange for a chance to escape. In the past, after Feng Zichen defeat, if it were not for the 4 imperial thrones, he would not know how long it would take for him to fully recover his strength. In other words, although the mysterious man had escaped from Feng Zichen, his strength was bound to drop to the freezing point. It would be wrong to be able to maintain the combat strength of Daluo Jingxian. Now was the best time to kill him. Just a few golden immortals of the great overarching heaven could completely destroy his life force. As for not knowing the identity of the mysterious man and his whereabouts, how could he kill him? There was no need to worry about this. The mysterious man's movements were very fast. He did not give Feng Zichen a chance to tear apart his disguise. However, from the moment he used a special method to possess the World Tree, he had exposed too much information. With the ability of the World Tree, if one wanted to possess his body and not be rejected by him, the person who possessed him must have unimaginable achievements in the wood element. After all, the World Tree was the leader of the primordial spiritual roots. It was the most supreme existence in the innate wood element. If one wanted to not be rejected by him, apart from having an innate spiritual root, one could only have unimaginable achievements in the innate wood element. One of the 3,000 guests of the Purple Cloud Palace, and one had unimaginable achievements in the innate wood element. More importantly, this person had just died. Even if he was resurrected in time, his strength would drop greatly. With these 3 conditions added together, there were not many people in the primordial world who met them. In this way, wouldn't the range be narrowed down? After all, there were only 3,000 guests of the Purple Cloud Palace. Among these 3,000 people, it might be a little difficult for Feng Zichen to find a powerful person who had just died and was good at the innate wood element. However, for Zhen Yuanzi, the great void Taoist, the Kunping Patriarch, and the others, these powerful people of the Purple Cloud Palace, it was an extremely easy task. At most, it would take some energy. They had all heard of the Purple Cloud Palace. They saw each other all the time. Who didn't know each other? Even someone like the Nether River Patriarch, who was a loner, was remembered, let alone other people. As long as these powerful people took action, they would find the mysterious man even if he was hiding in the chaos beyond the sky. As long as he had existed, there would definitely be traces left. By following these traces, they would be able to locate the traces of the mysterious man. As for whether those powerful people would be willing to help, of course they would. If the mysterious man was just purely an enemy of the human race, the powerful people would most likely stand by and watch. They might even be happy to see it happen. However, he should never have thought of destroying the primordial world. This was to become an enemy of the entire primordial world. At this moment, no one in the entire primordial world could tolerate him, let alone save him. Even his former friends would turn against him and become one of the people who hunted him down. The traitor was destined to die without a burial place. This matter has to be done as soon as possible. Otherwise, the longer it drags on, the more variables there will be. Who knows, I might really give that person a chance to escape. The mysterious man was so confident in his self-Tao immolation. Obviously, he was fully prepared. He was confident that he could be resurrected in an extremely short period of time and quickly pass the period of weakness. Therefore, this matter could not be delayed. It was best to find out his true identity before he was resurrected so as to completely cut off his hope of resurrection. With a thought, Feng Zichen was about to head to the battlefield in the depths of the void to meet up with those powerful people. However, just as he was about to move, he suddenly remembered something. He stopped in his tracks and looked at the void around the world tree that had completely turned into nothingness. I still have to deal with this place. Otherwise, if someone accidentally trespasses into this place, it will be troublesome. Looking around, Feng Zichen thought to himself. The power of nothingness was still too powerful, and it could not distinguish between friend and foe. If someone accidentally stepped into it, his ending would definitely be extremely miserable. For this, Feng Zichen still had to make a good arrangement to isolate this place from the outside world. If someone still barged into this place, then the other party's purpose was worth pondering. Thinking about it, he would not be wronged. Seal. With a thought, Feng Zichen raised the Hongmeng Daozhong. Dang! In an instant, the sound of a bell rang. The aura of Hongmeng covered the sky and earth and turned into a huge purple net, completely enveloping this place and completely isolating it from the outside world. He believed that with this net formed by the aura of Hongmeng, as long as the other party did not insist on entering the vicinity of the world tree, he would definitely not be able to pass through the purple net. That's good. Let's go. Putting away the Hongmeng Daozhong, Feng Zichen transformed into a purple aura of Hongmeng and carefully passed through the bounded domain of nothingness to leave this place. Under the power of nothingness, there was no time or space in this place, which eliminated the possibility of someone breaking through the air and arriving here. Similarly, if one wanted to leave this place, the ordinary method was also different. Because this place did not exist in the first place. Since it did not exist, how could one leave? Only the aura of Hongmeng had the power to create something out of nothing and could freely travel through this place. Just as Feng Zichen was traveling through the bounded domain of nothingness, the other two battlefields also changed. First was the boundless starry sky. After seeing that the 5 Chaos Demon Gods were defeated, the 4 Chaos Demon Gods who were fighting with God Pangu directly withdrew and left. The Pangu celestial being did not stop them. They were not the original bodies of the Chaos Demon Gods, so there was no point in them staying. Instead, they would force the other party to fight to the death and bring great damage to the boundless starry sky. Therefore, Feng Zichen allowed them to leave. On the other side, around the main battlefield of the human clan, seeing that their plan had failed, the Chaos Demon Gods did not have the heart to fight with the great mediums, so they all fled to outer space. Regarding this, the great divine ability masters were naturally very unwilling in their hearts. But they had no other choice. The strength of the two sides was not much different. If one side wanted to escape, the other side would definitely not be able to stop it. Fellow Taoists, please come to the heavenly court for a chat. I have something important to discuss with you. Just as everyone was hesitating, Feng Zichen's voice suddenly came from outer space and fell into their ears. Let's go. Knowing that Feng Zichen summoned them at this time, there must be something big happening. Everyone did not hesitate and rushed to the heavenly court. As the two sides left one after another, Xian Yuan's side and Qi Yu's side looked at the devastation on the ground and were speechless for a while. After so many things had happened, Xian Yuan and Qi Yu did not want to continue fighting at this moment. They withdrew their troops and went back to stabilize the people's hearts. But both sides understood that after this, the next battle might be the final battle. In the heavenly court, after Feng Zichen told everyone about the mysterious person, he directly left and returned to Ziwei Star. What happened after that? Without Feng Zichen's arrangement, those great mediums naturally knew what to do. Fellow Taoists, since that person has the idea of destroying the untainted world, it can be seen that he is no longer of the same mind as us. He is no longer our fellow Taoists. So, now is not the time to be merciful. I think all of you know what to do. After Feng Zichen left, Zhen Yuanzi said to everyone bitterly. Among the people present, his cultivation might not be the strongest, but in terms of merit and contribution to the untainted world, there was no doubt that Zhen Yuanzi was the highest. Therefore, he was qualified to occupy the main position. In fact, that was the case. These words were obviously more suitable for Zenyuanzi to say than for Feng Zichen. It was precisely because he understood this that Feng Zichen left directly after he finished speaking. After all, no matter what, that mysterious person was once their fellow Taoist and fellow Taoist. They closed the door to discuss how to clean up the sect. That was their own business. Feng Zichen was an outsider and it was really not appropriate for him to interfere. All the races have been caught. The internal strife of the human race should come to an end. On Ziwei's star, Feng Zichen silently watched the changes of the human race. In his eyes, this internal strife of the human race was like a huge storm. It had completely involved all the races and they could not escape. The fish had been caught. Of course, it was time to reap the harvest. Ao Shui asked the girl to go to the Gaochen Heavenly Palace and take the Emperor Sword that is stored in the Heavenly Emperor Palace and give it to Xianyuan. In the starry sky, Feng Zichen transmitted his voice to Ao Shui. With Qi Yu's strength and the help of the witch race, if Feng Zichen did not increase the stakes for Xianyuan, he would definitely not be able to defeat Qi Yu. No matter how declining the witch race was, they were still the witch race. Their strength was far beyond imagination. Moreover, had the witch race really declined? One had to know. What was the use of the 6 paths of reincarnation? With this treasure, it meant that the witch race had infinite possibilities. Those great witches who had fallen in the battle between the witch race and the demon race would eventually return one by one. Therefore, with the help of the witch race, Xianyuan alone would definitely not be able to defeat Qi Yu. At this moment, it was up to Feng Zichen to make a move. The Emperor's Sword that he asked the girl to go to the Gaochen Heavenly Palace to retrieve for Xianyuan was none other than the witch-killing sword that Di Jun had refined with the flesh and blood of countless humans. After the witch race calamity, this sword, along with the Heavenly Cycle Star banner, fell into the hands of Feng Zichen. The achievement of this sword could be said to have created the blood and tears of the human race. Therefore, this sword carried the thick resentment that came from the bodies of the innocent humans who had died tragically. In order to eliminate the resentment of this sword, Feng Zichen placed it in the Heavenly Emperor Palace and baptized it with the will power of the human race day and night. Finally, it was forged into a supreme divine sword that protected the human race. This sword had no name. It was its duty to protect the human race. Therefore, this sword's killing power was unparalleled. The best protection was to kill. Killing all the enemies would naturally give one the greatest security. The witch-killing sword. It was one of the strongest postnatal supreme treasures. After being baptized by the willpower of the human race, it had undoubtedly become stronger. Chapter 624. Under the baptism of the wish power of the human race, the sword had completely dissolved all the resentment and transformed into the race weapon of the human race. It was connected to the fate of the human race. In other words, the sword had already transcended the limits of its level and could not be judged by common sense. The power it could exert was related to the fate of the human race. The stronger the fate of the human race, the stronger the power it could exert. If the fate of the human race reached its peak one day, it could exert the power of a Khanate treasure, or even surpass it. Of course, if the human race declined, the power of the sword would drop to the freezing point, or even collapse. In short, the power of the sword was related to the fate of the human race. With the current fate of the human race, the sword could exert the power of a supreme-grade Khanate spirit treasure, or even infinitely close to a Khanate treasure. In this way, with the help of the sword, Xianyuan might be able to defeat Qi Yu. It was only a possibility, not a certainty. If Xianyuan could get help from Feng Zichen, Qi Yu could also get help from Hudu. With the foundation of the Wu tribe, the treasures they offered were not necessarily inferior to those offered by Feng Zichen. Therefore, in order to be safe, Feng Zichen gave Xianyuan more than that. Just as the girl was heading to Gaochen Heavenly Palace, the mysterious West Kunlun in the untainted land finally revealed a corner of its mysterious veil. Caw! With a high-pitched caw, a blue phoenix wrapped in blue flames flew out of West Kunlun with a veiled goddess on its back. It flew towards the territory of the human race. This woman was the master of West Kunlun, the leader of the female immortals in the untainted land, and the disciple of the Queen Mother of the West. At the same time, she was also one of the 3 ancestors of the human race, Zihuangzi clan. He went to the human race. His purpose was naturally to help Xianyuan. This was another trump card Feng Zichen had prepared for Xianyuan. Has Zihuang left? Then it's time for me to make my move. On the Ziwei star, after Feng Zichen saw 9 Heavens mystical maiden walking out of West Kunlun, he no longer hesitated and immediately sent a message to the 5 innate races, asking them to help Xianyuan's side. At the same time, Feng Zichen also issued a decree to the Heavenly Court, ordering the experts of the Heavenly Court to come down and support the human Emperor Xianyuan. This was a benefit for them. If they could assist the human emperor in unifying the untainted land, those who had participated in the war would more or less gain some merit when the war ended. After all, things were different now. As the great desolate world became increasingly perfect, it became increasingly difficult to obtain merit. Therefore, every major event that was related to merit was a great opportunity for everyone, and they could not miss it no matter what. Orders were passed down from the Ziwei star into the ears of the 5 innate races experts and the Heaven Court's gods. For a time, the untainted land was in turmoil again. Many experts responded to Feng Zichen's call and set off from the dojo to the ancestral land of the human race to help the human emperor Xianyuan. It was precisely because of this that the strength of Xuanyuan's side soared several times in a very short period of time. When Feng Zichen was helping Xianyuan, Qiyu's side was not calm either. A Khanate Grand Magus who lived in seclusion walked out of the Pangu Palace with the Grand Magus blood essence and came to Qiyu. He was Xingtian. The person who came was the most powerful Grand Magus of the wizard clan, Xingtian. Xingtian was born from Pangu's heart. He was the first Grand Magus to be born after the birth of the ancestral Magus. He could be said to be the number 1 Magus below the 12 ancestral Magi, with the cultivation of the great perfection of the sage-to-be. Xingtian had come. He had come to help Qiyu. This was not difficult to understand. Qiyu was the reincarnation of Wu Shisan, and Wu Shisan was the existence that replaced Hudu. As a Grand Magus of the Hudu tribe, Xingtian had to stand on the same side as him. In fact, the Grand Magus of the wizard clan who had been teaching Qiyu was the incarnation of Xingtian. What kind of status did Wu Shisan have in the wizard clan? How could he not have a protector when he was reincarnated? Xingtian was his protector. This time, the reason why Xingtian came was that he could not stand it anymore. The 2 sides were originally evenly matched, but because of the other side's cheating, the gap between them suddenly widened. How could the bad-tempered Xingtian tolerate this? Therefore, he took a small part of the Grand Magus blood essence from the Pangu Palace to improve the strength of Qiyu's side. Although Qiyu's force was made up of countless mutant branches, the foundation of this alliance and the backbone of it was the wizard clan where Qiyu came from. The wizard clan. They were lives born from the intermarriage between the human race and the wizard clan. They inherited the bloodline of the wizard clan and were born stronger than ordinary humans. They could even be compared to the innate human clan in the ancient times. With such talent, their understanding of the Tao of gods and demons was obviously much stronger than ordinary humans. Because of this, they were powerful. Among the human race, there were not many clans who could compete with the wizard clan. Only the Feng clan where Feng Zichen came from had better talent than the wizard clan because they were favored by Feng Zichen. However, the pure Feng clan was the royal family of the human race. There were very few of them and they could not be compared to the wizard clan. And this. It created the powerful reputation of the wizard clan. If such a powerful wizard clan refined the Grand Magus blood essence, their strength would definitely increase by a few levels. In this way, it would be even more difficult for the human race to compete with them. Moreover, Xingtian came here not only with the Grand Magus blood essence, but also with the innate divine weapon that the 12 ancestral magi had forged for Wu Shisan. It was a large halberd that was surrounded by a murderous aura and emitted a terrifying wave. The name of the weapon was the Wizard Halberd. It was simple and straightforward, very fitting with the naming style of the wizard clan. The aura emitted by the Wizard Halberd was unusually strong. However, it had no level. Not only it, but the weapons of the other ancestral magi also had no level. They were the purest weapons and there were no marks of Tao or rule marks on them. The only thing they possessed was power, incomparable power. They had unleashed the power they had inherited from Pangu to the pinnacle. It was full of the beauty of strength. This kind of weapon that abandoned all Tao and only retained the purest strength was undoubtedly powerful in the hands of the ancestral magi who had strong physical bodies. It was unimaginably strong. It could be said that once Qiyu mastered the wizard halberd, his strength would definitely increase by more than a few times. There was nothing in the world that could not be broken. If it could not be broken, it was not because of the lack of strength, but because the strength was not enough. 8,000 years later, Xianyuan integrated all the forces under his command and felt that the time was right. He launched an army to attack Qiyu. At the same time, Qiyu's side had also digested the resources that Xingtian had brought from Pangu's palace. Their strength had increased greatly. Therefore, Qiyu also moved and launched an army to attack Xianyuan. Just like that, a shocking battle broke out between the two sides in Zhuolu. At the beginning of the battle, the two sides tacitly launched the fiercest attacks in an attempt to destroy each other in one fell swoop. However, because the two sides were evenly matched in strength, they fought for a long time but there was no winner. Both sides were exchanging blows back and forth, fighting to their heart's content, but they were unable to determine a victor. Over time, the battle was in a stalemate. However, this stalemate did not last long. Very soon, it was broken by a sudden change of events. The other folk from the Seven Stars continent and the other folk from the 5 pre-celestial races suddenly rebelled and joined Xianyuan. This sudden turn of events could be said to have caught Qiyu off guard. Similarly, because of these mutants' betrayal, the strength of Xuanyuan's side increased, while the strength of Qiyu's side decreased greatly. As a result, the situation changed immediately. The previous evenly matched situation was completely reversed. Qiyu's side was defeated by Xuanyuan's side and fled in a sorry state. During this period, Qiyu tried to turn the tide and reorganize his army to fight Xianyuan to the death. However, before he could make a move, what greeted him was the joint attack of all the top experts on Xuanyuan's side. Xianyuan, Xiannu of the Ninth Heaven, Taoist Randeng, Yinglong, and a series of quasi-saint experts joined forces to kill Qiyu. The result could be imagined. Even though Qiyu's combat strength was unparalleled, facing the joint attack of so many existences of the same realm as him, he could not avoid being defeated and captured. That's right, Qiyu was suppressed and captured alive by everyone. Originally, Qiyu had the chance to self-destruct. However, the scene of ancestral which self-destructing had really shocked everyone. Therefore, before Wu Shisan entered the cycle of reincarnation, Huda had restricted him so that he could not self-destruct. And this became the main reason why Qiyu was captured. Imagine. At the critical moment when Qiyu wanted to self-destruct and end all of this, he suddenly realized that he could not do it. That moment of shock and absent-mindedness became his biggest flaw. Suddenly losing his mind during the life-and-death battle was the main reason why Qiyu was captured. Fellow Taoist, what do you mean by this? Just as Qiyu was captured, Xingtian said coldly to the peerless figure from the Seven Stars continent in the void. At this moment, Xingtian was very angry. As he spoke, the violent aura around him could not help but pour out and suppress the other party. However, the other party was obviously not a good person. Just as Xingtian's berserk aura was about to reach him, a mysterious aura suddenly rose from the body of the exceptional being from the Seven Stars continent and neutralized the aura that was bearing down on him. This was the ability to turn everything into void. It was because of this that Xingtian was afraid and resisted the urge to attack and talk to the other party. Otherwise, with Xingtian's bad temper, he would have already killed the other party. Ha! Fellow Taoist Xingtian, what do you think I mean? The matters of the human race will be settled by the human race themselves. Why do you, an outsider, have to interfere? The peerless figure from the Seven Stars continent laughed and comforted Xingtian. I'm only here to save Qiyu. I have no intention of interfering in the affairs of the human race. Chi-Yu has the potential of an ancestral wizard. He must not be lost to the human race. With a cold snort, Xianxia explained. Just now, when he saw that Chi-Yu had been captured, he rushed over in a hurry to try to save Chi-Yu. However, he did not expect that halfway through he would be blocked by Chi-Yu's other teacher, a peerless figure from the Seven Stars continent. It was also at this moment that Xianxia realized that he had misjudged. That person who usually did not show his strength was actually so powerful that he was not weaker than him at all. In fact, he was even stronger than him. That was very terrifying. There were not many such people in the human race. Other than Feng Zichen in ancient times, only Fuxi and Shenong in the human race had such powerful strength. Which one of the three people was he? Since fellow Taoist knows Chi-Yu's identity, why don't you ask the Lady of Earth for her opinion? If Chi-Yu is really in danger, why wouldn't the Lady of Earth take action? Just as Xianxia was feeling puzzled, he heard the person say slowly, "What? This?" Hearing this, Xianxia could not help but become a little bewildered. That's right. With the strength of the ancestral wizard of Earth, everything that happened here naturally could not be hidden from him. But even so, the ancestral wizard of Earth still did not make a move. Didn't that mean that everything was under the control of the ancestral wizard of Earth? Thinking of this, Xianxia felt a little relieved. He felt that he was worried for nothing. The ancestral wizard of Earth was not in a hurry. Why was he in a hurry? However, after being relieved, Xianxia could not help but have greater doubts in his heart. Who was this person? He even knew Chi-Yu's true identity? Could it be? With a thought, a bold idea appeared in Xianxia's heart. You are... Xianxia suddenly raised his head and was about to call out the other party's identity. However, in front of him, the person had already disappeared without a trace, leaving only an empty void. Zichen clan. At this moment, Xianxia finally spat out a name in a discouraged manner. He suspected that the person in front of him was Feng Zichen. Only he would know so much about the Magi. Is it really you? Magi Pangu, the Zichen clan? After muttering silently, Xianxia turned his head and rushed to the nether realm. He wanted to confirm his guess from the Lady of Earth. Tiske. Was I still recognized? As expected of my good friend. Just after Xianxia left, the peerless figure from the Seven Stars continent, oh no, it should be Feng Zichen, leisurely walked out of the void. He looked in the direction where Xianxia left and sighed. That's right. The peerless figure from the Seven Stars continent. It was Feng Zichen. In this world, who else but Feng Zichen had achievements that no one else could surpass on the path of gods and demons, and who else could be comparable to the ancestral wizard? No matter what, Chi-Yu was the reincarnation of Wuxia, and his status was extremely noble. Who in the human race was qualified to be his teacher? Fuxi had descended into the world, and the Grand Pure One had personally accepted him as a disciple. Even if Wuxia's status was not as high as Fuxi's, it was not far away. In this case, he could not casually find someone to teach Chi-Yu. Otherwise, if it was not done properly, it would bring shame to the Magi. At that time, no matter how good his relationship with Feng Zichen was, the Lady of Earth would not be satisfied and would definitely not let him go. It would even ruin the relationship between the two clans. Chapter 625. Based on the above points, Feng Zichen split out an incarnation and used the name of a peerless figure of the Seven Stars continent to personally teach Chi-Yu. After all, Feng Zichen also had the name of a wizard. It was the most suitable for him to teach Chi-Yu. A wizard was the master of the wizard race. Sigh. I'm born to work. Shaking his head and sighing, Feng Zichen disappeared into the void. Next, he would be busy. Back then, in order to get Goddess Hudu to agree to let Wuxia reincarnate into the human race, Feng Zichen had promised to give Wuxia a great opportunity to help him achieve the Tao. Now, with Chi-Yu's defeat and capture by Xianyuan, it was time for him to fulfill his promise. The ancestral land of the human race, in front of the Tai Temple. 5 thick divine chains of order stretched out from the void and firmly locked Chi-Yu's limbs, fixing him in the void and preventing him from coming into contact with the earth. Standing on the earth, the power of the wizard race could be said to be endless. As the leader of the wizard race, Qiyu had obviously inherited this. If he came into contact with the earth, he might be able to escape. Therefore, everyone locked him in the void to prevent Qiyu from obtaining power from the earth. The purpose of everyone locking Qiyu here was to execute him in public. To execute the punishment of being dismembered by 5 horses. Qiyu's actions were to fight for the status of the mutants, but in reality he was dividing the human race. Therefore, Xianyuan gave him retribution and dismembered him. Those who divided the human race should be dismembered. Xianyuan, I don't accept this. You tricked me. You won with an unfair advantage. Qiyu was still unconvinced as he was locked in the void by the divine chains of order. In his opinion, Xianyuan was far from his match. If he hadn't used tricks, how could he have defeated him? Or even captured him alive? Therefore, he was not convinced. You still don't know that you're about to die. Execute. Xianyuan snorted coldly and ignored Qiyu. Instead, he ordered coldly. Yes, Your Majesty. As soon as Xianyuan gave the order, 5 people stepped forward to accept it. They were all experts from the 5 Xiantian races, and each of them had the same cultivation base as Daluo Jingxian. Without further ado, the 5 of them took out 5 innate divine chains and placed them around Qiyu's neck and limbs. After doing this, the 5 of them took a deep breath and shouted. They pulled the innate divine chains in their hands with all their might and headed in the opposite direction of Qiyu. As Daluo Jingxian, one of the innate 5 Daluo Jingxian, one could easily imagine the strength of these 5 people. Even if a greater 1,000 world was placed in front of them without any defense and allowed to be pulled, it would be pulled apart by them. Therefore, when the 5 of them pulled at the innate divine chains in their hands with all their might, Qiyu's body was pulled straight in an instant. It stood upright in the void. However, that was all. After Qiyu's body was pulled straight, no matter how hard the 5 of them tried, they couldn't take another step forward. Qiyu's body was too strong. It was far from what they could destroy. Xianyuan, you think you can tear my body apart with just them? You're underestimating me. Come back. In the void, Qiyu looked at the 5 people who were struggling to pull the innate divine chains in their hands and couldn't help but laugh out loud. Then, with a loud shout, he exerted all his strength and stretched out his limbs, forcefully pulling the 5 of them back. Bang, 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 bang. Caught off guard, the 5 people were pulled down by Qiyu on the spot. Looking at the miserable state of the 5 people, Qiyu couldn't help but laugh out loud. He didn't think that Xianyuan had the ability to kill him. He knew his own situation very well. Qiyu's body had been baptized by the essence blood of the ancestral wish. In addition, his comprehension of the path of gods and demons had made his body immortal. If one wanted to destroy his body, they would either use a primordial treasure or spend a lot of time using the power of time to destroy it. And these 2 points, with the current situation of the human race, it was very difficult to do. Qiyu, you're so arrogant. Let's see how the poor way comes to kill you. Besides Xianyuan, Taoist Randeng couldn't help but scold Qiyu when he saw that a prisoner like Qiyu dared to be so arrogant. At the same time, he also took out his lifelong spiritual treasure, the high-grade primordial spiritual treasure, the universal ruler, and attacked Qiyu in an attempt to kill him. Boom! A ruler surrounded by clear light flew out from Taoist Randeng's hand and turned into a huge universal world that pressed down on Qiyu. A vast world fell down and smashed onto Qiyu's body. One could imagine the power that erupted. On the spot, Qiyu let out a loud wail. Pain, it was too painful. But that was it. Apart from the pain, the attack of the universal ruler did not cause any harm to Qiyu. Boom, 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 the universal ruler smashed down again and again, causing Qiyu to roar angrily. However, his aura did not weaken at all. After a while, Taoist Randeng could not help but feel a little tired because he had continuously activated the universal ruler with all his might. He then put away his Dharma treasure with the resentful expression. At this moment, without the universal ruler blocking him, Qiyu appeared in front of everyone again. Compared to before, there was not much change. Under Taoist Randeng's crazy attacks, Qiyu was not injured at all. This time, Taoist Randeng was really embarrassed. His words were beautiful previously, but the result, ahem. Your Majesty, Qiyu's body has been baptized by the blood essence of the Magus and has reached the indestructible realm. I'm afraid it's difficult to destroy it with ordinary methods. In order to hide his embarrassment, Taoist Randeng first coughed a few times before explaining to Xianyuan. Boom, boom, boom. Just as Taoist Randeng was speaking, a few mighty figures who did not believe in evil used their own methods and attacked Qiyu. The result was the same as before. It was useless. Trash, a bunch of trash. You want to kill me with just you? Dream on. Even though he was trapped in everyone's divine abilities, Qiyu still had the mood to mock them. Everyone was embarrassed when they heard that. However, everything that had happened just now proved that Qiyu was telling the truth. For a moment, everyone felt aggrieved. Qiyu, don't be arrogant. Watch me kill you. Xianyuan sword. Seeing how arrogant Qiyu was, Xianyuan could not help but be a little angry. He raised the Xianyuan sword and slashed at Qiyu. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 5 sword lights shot out from the Xianyuan sword and slashed at Qiyu's neck and limbs. It was strange that Qiyu's body, which no one could hurt before, was as fragile as tofu under the 5 sword lights. It was easily cut by the sword lights. In the blink of an eye, Qiyu's head and limbs were separated from his body. His whole body was divided into 6 parts. This was not surprising. The predecessor of the Xianyuan sword was the Wu-killing sword that Di Jun had specially refined to deal with the ancestor of sorcery. The power of this sword could easily break the body of the ancestor of sorcery, let alone Qiyu's body. It was his nemesis. How could it be? Even though his body was divided into 6 parts, Qiyu still did not die. He just looked at his split body in a daze, his eyes full of disbelief. His almost indestructible body was so easily cut down by someone? He's not dead? Just when Qiyu was in a daze, he heard Xuanyuan's surprised voice. Guards! Suppress Qiyu's body in the 5 lakes and 4 seas so that it can never be gathered. Then, before Qiyu could react, Xuanyuan's majestic voice continued. After that, Qiyu heard someone take the order and leave with his broken body. After that, Qiyu's consciousness fell into a deep sleep, and he had no idea what happened next. Today, I will use the power of the 6 forces to refine your broken body. When you break out of the seal in the future, you will have the confidence to become a primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. After everyone had suppressed Qiyu's body parts, Feng Zichen appeared silently. He performed a supreme grand superpower to draw in the innate 6 directions force and infused it into the 6 parts of Qiyu's body. This tribulation was also a kind of opportunity for Qiyu. As the saying goes, there can be no construction without destruction. Although Qiyu's body was divided into 6 parts, Feng Zichen drew the power of the 6 forces for him to refine his body. In this way, when Qiyu's body was reunited in the future, he could use the power of the 6 forces to break through to the realm of primordial Daluo Jinxian. This was a great opportunity. It was just that the price he had to pay was a little high. However, this price was nothing compared to becoming a primordial Daluo Jinxian. After arranging everything, Feng Zichen left. As for when Qiyu's body would be reunited, that was a matter of the witch race. It had nothing to do with him. Because Qiyu was no longer the Qiyu of the human race, but Wu Shisan of the witch race. From the moment Qiyu was dismembered by Xianyuan, his fate with the human race was over. With the defeat of the Jiuli tribe and the death of Qiyu, Xianyuan finally unified the human race and integrated all the forces of the human race. It was also at this time that Xianyuan led the human army and began to conquer the 10,000 races. He was taking revenge. The 10,000 races secretly helped the mutants and tried to split the human race. As the human emperor, how could Xianyuan let them go so easily? Naturally, he had to teach the 10,000 races a lesson and weaken their strength. Xianyuan led the human army to sweep through the 10,000 races in the name of cleaning up the traitors. The 10,000 races were naturally dissatisfied with this. However, because they were in the wrong and the human race was too powerful to resist, they all came to surrender with compensation. What followed was a series of wrangling. It was impossible to wipe out the 10,000 races in one fell swoop. Xianyuan naturally knew this. Therefore, his purpose was not to destroy the 10,000 races, but to torture them and consume their strength. This time, even if he couldn't destroy the 10,000 races, he would hurt them so that he could clear the obstacles for future generations. This was Xuanyuan's purpose. And this had nothing to do with Feng Zichen. He believed that with Xuanyuan's means, he could handle all of this. At this moment, Feng Zichen was dealing with another matter. Escaped. Under your siege, the person escaped? In the Ziwei Heavenly Palace, Feng Zichen looked at Zenyuanzi in disbelief, as if he couldn't believe what he had said. Zenyuanzi had come to tell him about the identity of the mysterious person. After everyone's hard work, they finally confirmed the identity of the person. It was Taoist Mu Xian, one of the 3,000 visitors of the Purple Cloud Palace. This person was the manifestation of the innate wood origin. His achievements in the innate wood element were not much worse than Go Mang's. As an innate god born from the innate wood origin, Taoist Mu Xian had always given people the impression that he was kind-hearted and loved life the most. According to this, he shouldn't have done anything to destroy the untainted world. However, after repeated confirmation by everyone, it was indeed him. This made it difficult for everyone to accept. How could such a good person suddenly become a great demon that could destroy the heavens and the earth? With curiosity, everyone went to explore Taoist Mu Xian's mental journey, trying to find the reason for his change. When a group of great divine abilities joined forces, the power that erupted was undoubtedly astonishing. They were the incarnations of the Great Path, the favorites of heaven and earth. Under their joint efforts, the origin of heaven and earth would be alarmed, and even saints would have to retreat. From this, one could see how powerful they were. Therefore, under their joint efforts, they really found some clues. The change of Taoist Mu Xian. It was related to the demon god of chaos who had possessed him. At that time, the demon god of chaos had failed to possess Taoist Mu Xian. Seeing that he was about to be swallowed by Taoist Mu Xian, he was extremely unwilling and made the demon god of chaos do something shocking. He used all his strength to integrate his remnant spirit into Taoist Mu Xian's innate indestructible true spirit. Although this greatly increased Taoist Mu Xian's strength, it also made him under the influence of the remnant spirit of the demon god of chaos all the time. Because of this, Taoist Mu Xian's temperament changed greatly, and he had the idea of destroying the untainted world and refining the Hongmeng purple qi to become a saint. As for the demon god of chaos, he felt that having a saint on his side would be helpful to his future plans, so he helped him. The previous world-destroying action was because of this. After finding the reason for Taoist Mu Xian's depravity, everyone felt pity in their hearts, but they also knew that he couldn't be left alive. If a person who knew the details of the untainted world stood on the opposite side of the untainted world, the consequences would undoubtedly be terrible. Thinking of this, everyone was more diligent in finding the whereabouts of Taoist Mu Xian. With the joint efforts of everyone, they soon found the whereabouts of Taoist Mu Xian. At that time, Taoist Mu Xian had just been resurrected, and before he had time to look around, he was surrounded by a group of great magicians. Logically speaking, a powerless great ability user would naturally be captured without being able to put up any resistance when faced with several dozen great ability users who were at their peak. However, the truth was often unexpected. Chapter 626. He escaped. Taoist Mu Xian escaped. Under the siege of a group of powerful figures, Taoist Mu Xian escaped calmly. This was the reason why Feng Zichen was shocked. A group of ferocious tigers surrounding a sheep, and the sheep even managed to escape. Wasn't this a joke? How could the flying dragon lose? Taoist Zenyuanzi, what's going on? Extremely surprised, Feng Zichen asked Zenyuanzi directly. Alas! It's also poor Wei's fault for being careless. I didn't expect Taoist Mu Xian to have the congenital Taoist talisman refined by my teacher in the past. This gave him a chance to escape. At this point, Zhenyuanzi sighed with emotion. Obviously, this result was also beyond his expectations. Before the incident, no one would have thought that Taoist Mu Xian would have a chance to escape. The congenital Taoist talisman refined by the Taoist ancestor? No. When did the Taoist ancestor refine the congenital Taoist talisman? Why haven't I heard of it? Moreover, why would the congenital Taoist talisman refined by the Taoist ancestor appear in the hands of Taoist Mu Xian? Hearing this, Feng Zichen became more and more puzzled. Why had he never heard of the congenital Taoist talisman refined by the Taoist ancestor, and had never seen anyone use it? Such a treasure. He shouldn't be unknown to the public. Must be a supreme treasure that everyone was fighting for. He should have heard of it. It's normal that your majesty doesn't know about this. In fact, not many people in the entire untainted land know about this. Even poor Wei didn't know about it before Taoist Mu Xian took out the congenital Taoist talisman refined by my teacher. Shaking his head, Zhenyuanzi said helplessly. He really didn't know that the Taoist ancestor refined the congenital Taoist talisman. Why is that? It was about the treasure refined by the Taoist ancestor, so Feng Zichen couldn't help but be curious. Therefore, he continued to ask. Back then, after the 3 sermons in the Purple Cloud Palace, my teacher left an opportunity for poor Wei and the others on the treasure-snatching rock. It could be said that our master-disciple relationship was fulfilled. Countless innate treasures are listed on the treasure-snatching rock. Many of them are connate numinous treasures that teacher collected when he traveled through the primordial world. Some of them are connate treasures with special functions that master forged in his spare time. These Xiantian treasures are extremely rare, and their abilities are even more bizarre. They are hidden among the numerous innate spiritual treasures, and only those with great opportunities can obtain them. The connate Dao talisman in Taoist Mu Xian's hand belongs to this type of special treasure. A treasure like this is extremely secretive. If its owner didn't take the initiative to reveal it, others would absolutely be unable to detect it in the slightest. And who would publicize the fact that they obtained such a treasure? Therefore, no one knew that Taoist Mu Xian had obtained the innate Taoist talisman made by the Taoist ancestor, and no one knew that innate Taoist talismans existed in this world. If Taoist Mu Xian hadn't used this talisman in order to escape, I'm afraid this news would have been buried forever. At this point, Zhenyuanzi's tone was laced with envy. The power of the innate Taoist talisman made by the Taoist ancestor must be quite terrifying. It was no exaggeration to say that with this talisman, it was equivalent to having a second life. Who wouldn't envy it? At least, Zhenyuanzi couldn't. Even Feng Zichen was a little tempted after hearing this. But what he was more worried about was that since there was the first innate Taoist talisman made by the Taoist ancestor, would there be a second or third one? Moreover, even a treasure like the innate Taoist talisman had appeared. Who knew what other strange treasures would appear next? Thinking of this, Feng Zichen couldn't help but have a headache. The water in the primordial world was getting deeper and deeper. He was also careless. He had never thought that the legendary treasure-snatching rock, in addition to numerous connate numinous treasures, there were also some gadgets made by the Taoist ancestor. This was very speechless. The Taoist ancestor really knew how to play. Alas! Sighing in his heart, Feng Zichen understood that in the future, he would have to re-evaluate the powerful divines in the primordial world. Even Taoist Mu Xian had the innate Taoist talisman made by the Taoist ancestor. Who knew what other people had in their hands? Maybe someone had an offensive jade talisman made by the Taoist ancestor. That would be exciting. Thinking of this, Feng Zichen comforted Zhenyuanzi. Don't worry. I see. You can't blame the others for this. Who would have thought that Taoist Mu Xian had the innate Taoist talisman left by the Taoist ancestor? Fortunately, Taoist Mu Xian used the innate Taoist talisman to escape, instead of fighting desperately with you. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Feng Zichen didn't know the specific power of the innate Taoist talisman. But since it had something to do with Taoist Hongjun, its power couldn't be underestimated. From the fact that Taoist Mu Xian could easily escape from the encirclement of many powerful divines by relying on it, it could be seen that the power of the innate Taoist talisman was definitely extremely powerful. If Taoist Mu Xian didn't use this Taoist talisman to escape but used it to attack the powerful divines, the power of the innate Taoist talisman might explode. If they were caught off guard, one or two of them would really die completely. This time, the experience of the powerful divines was really exciting. Fortunately, Poor Wei and the others went with many people. Otherwise, if one or two of them went alone, I'm afraid they wouldn't be able to come back. Thinking of the terrible consequences, even Zhen Yuanzi couldn't help but feel a little scared. This operation, in general, it was really unlucky. When everyone worked together, it should have been a sure thing, but there was an accident. Not only did it embarrass them, but they almost lost their lives. Wasn't that unlucky? Brother Zhen Yuanzi, there's something I'd like to discuss with you all. I hope you can pass on my message. After a moment of silence, Feng Zichen suddenly said to Zhen Yuanzi with a serious face, "What's the matter, Your Majesty? I'll definitely relay it to my fellow Taoists." Seeing Feng Zichen's serious face, Zhen Yuanzi also replied with a serious face, "Brother, the failure to kill Taoist Mu Xian will definitely intensify his determination to turn to the chaos demonic god. In the future, the untainted land will be in danger. For this reason, I plan to summon all the Daluo Jingxian in the untainted land and persuade them to leave the untainted land voluntarily to reduce the pressure on the untainted land. If there are no more Daluo Jingxian in the untainted land, no matter how powerful Taoist Mu Xian is, he can't provoke disputes in the untainted land. In this way, the untainted land will undoubtedly be much safer than before." Speaking of this, Feng Zichen paused, changed the topic, and asked Zhen Yuanzi earnestly, "If I want to accomplish this, I will undoubtedly need the help of all of you. Thus, Ziwei sincerely requests that all of you lend me a hand. The fewer top forces in the untainted land, the safer the untainted land would be." There was nothing wrong with this. If the untainted land was full of Tai Jingxian, it would be difficult to shake the untainted land even if they all self-destructed. But if Daluo Jingxian, sage to be, and powerful mediums self-destructed, it would be different. It would really shake the foundation of the untainted land. In order to prevent this from happening, Feng Zichen took this opportunity to try to move all the masters above Daluo Jingxian in the untainted land away. After hearing Feng Zichen's words, Zhen Yuanzi didn't immediately agree. He was a little hesitant, because he saw through Feng Zichen's real purpose. Why would he need Zhen Yuanzi's help just to move the Daluo Jingxian? With the strength of great Emperor Ziwei, who would dare to disobey an order from Daluo Jingxian in the untainted land? Did they really think that great Emperor Ziwei wouldn't kill? It was clearly something that great Emperor Ziwei could do easily, so why would he ask for Zhen Yuanzi's help? Obviously, his order wasn't targeted at Daluo Jingxian, but at the powerful mediums of the untainted land. When it came to the unstable factors of the untainted land, of course, it was the powerful mediums. Throughout the several destructive catastrophes that the untainted land had experienced, they were all caused by the powerful mediums. Therefore, as long as all the powerful mediums of the untainted land left the untainted land would be countless times safer than before, even if it wasn't 100% safe. As for the remaining Daluo Jingxian, what could they do? Not to mention Feng Zichen, any powerful mediums could kill them all with a flip of their palm. However, Daluo Jingxian was easy to deal with, but the powerful mediums were not. There was no doubt that they belonged to the top of the untainted land and were one of the rulers of the untainted land. They were the incarnations of the will of the Great Path. They were incomparably ancient and powerful, and they had countless trump cards. Even if the saints had strength that far surpassed them, they wouldn't be willing to fall out with them easily. The power they had was enough to destroy the untainted land. It was easy to imagine how difficult it would be to get them to leave the untainted land. It was precisely because of this that Feng Zichen had scruples and turned to Zhen Yuanzi for help. Speaking of which, if it weren't for the failure to kill Taoist Mu Xian this time, Feng Zichen wouldn't have dared to propose such a bold idea. The powerful mediums had an unshirkable responsibility for the failure to kill Taoist Mu Xian. Therefore, Feng Zichen had a high chance of implementing this plan with this reason. This was a rare opportunity. If he missed this opportunity, he didn't know how long he would have to wait for the next one. Therefore, regardless of whether it was successful or not, Feng Zichen had to give it a try. Moreover, he might not necessarily fail. Zhen Yuanzi was the key to the success of this plan. As long as he could get his help, the plan would have a 60 to 70% chance of success. As for whether Zhen Yuanzi would agree or not, Feng Zichen wasn't worried at all. Zhen Yuanzi's character could be imagined as he was able to become good friends with ancestor Red Cloud. Moreover, in order to stop the spread of the untainted land in the west, Zhen Yuanzi went to the border between the east and the west alone and set up a Taoist right there. He had blocked the untainted land for countless years. Therefore, Zhen Yuanzi was someone who cared about the untainted land. Feng Zichen persuaded him with the safety of the untainted land. With Zhen Yuanzi's character, it was hard for him to refuse. This was how a gentleman could be taken advantage of. Although it was shameless, it was effective. Forget it. For the safety of the untainted land, the poor Wei will sacrifice my face to persuade my old friends to leave the untainted land. Zhen Yuanzi hesitated for a moment before he gritted his teeth and said, "This was a job that would offend people. Asking people to move for no reason, even if the reason was justified, would be disliked by people." This time, Zhen Yuanzi was really taking a huge risk. Ziwei is here to treat all living beings in the untainted land. Thank you for your righteousness. After Zhen Yuanzi agreed, Feng Zichen hurriedly stood up and bowed to him to thank him for his righteous action today. This time, Ziwei owes you a favor. If you need my help in the future, I will do my best to help. Feng Zichen thought for a while and felt that words of gratitude were far less direct than actions. Therefore, he directly promised Zhen Yuanzi. Once he said this, it meant that in the future, Feng Zichen would do his best for Zhen Yuanzi. One had to know that, with Feng Zichen's strength, he was not inferior to any saint. With his full strength, he could even suppress a primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. From this, one could see the weight of his promise this time. In normal times, this was a result that even a supreme-grade primordial spirit treasure could not exchange for. "Ha! Your Majesty, you're exaggerating. There's no time to lose. The poor Wei will go now." With a chuckle, Zhen Yuanzi said goodbye to Feng Zichen and turned to leave the Ziwei Heavenly Palace. It was not difficult to persuade the great masters to leave the untainted land. As long as the great masters ranked at the top of the untainted land all agreed, the remaining great masters would be easy to deal with. However, it wasn't a simple matter to get the agreement of the top-ranked great divinities. Fortunately, Feng Zichen would not let Zhen Yuanzi fight alone. While he asked Fuxi to accompany Zhen Yuanzi to persuade the great masters, he tried to contact the saints who were far away in outer space. There had to be a leader to move out of the untainted land, and this leader had to be important. Only then would he be able to set an example. And this candidate in the untainted land, could there be a more suitable candidate than the saint? The saint was the spokesperson of the heavenly Tao in the untainted land. Their every move represented the will of the heavens. If the saint was the first to leave the untainted land, it would mean that it was the will of the heavens. When the other great masters saw this, their resistance would not be so strong. Who would dare to go against the will of the heavens? The saints had no reason to disagree with this matter that concerned the safety of the untainted land. Even if they did not agree, the heavenly Tao would not force them to agree. Therefore, Feng Zichen was not worried that the saints would refuse at all. Rumble. On this day, the untainted land, which had been peaceful for many years, suddenly there was a huge commotion, and the entire earth was shaking. Such a strange situation naturally attracted the attention of countless people. Therefore, everyone looked in the direction of the sound. But then they were shocked. As far as the eye could see, there were many unbelievable scenes. They saw The towering Kunlun Mountain, where the Eastern ancestral bloodline was located, the Taoist field of Heavenly Lord Xianxia suddenly trembled violently, emitting endless rays of light, as if it was about to rise from the ground. And the change was not only that. Chapter 627. While Mount Kunlun was changing, the other Saint dojos, such as Mount Shouyang, Golden Ao Island, and Mount Meru were also changing. Endless Tao patterns that were emitting divine light rose from their bodies, illuminating the entire primordial world. It was extremely bright. What's going on? Are the saints coming back? The sudden change in the Saint dojos confused all living beings in the primordial world. They could only think that it was a phenomenon that was spontaneously produced by the Saint dojos because the saints were about to return from outer space. However, while the living beings did not understand the reason, the great divines seemed to have vaguely understood something. They're trying to isolate the world. Thinking about Great Emperor Ziwei's plan, the great divines made a guess. The subsequent actions of the saints' Taoist temples undoubtedly confirmed their guesses. Rumble. Soon after the Saint dojos emitted the bright divine light, they began to slowly retract their power. Almost visible to the naked eye, the rising divine light and Tao patterns began to rapidly retract and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. This change did not mark the end of the phenomenon, but it meant that the Saint dojos were trying their best to retract their power and store it in their bodies to erupt with stronger waves. Bang! When the power was accumulated to the limit, there was a bang, and several extremely terrifying waves gushed out from the Saint dojos. The power exploded like fireworks, giving rise to countless mysterious runes that were embedded in the void. They were densely packed and spread around the sages' dojos. At this moment, all living beings in the primordial world looked at the Saint dojos and realized that the supreme holy land that used to be shrouded by the clear Saint Chi could not be seen clearly today. Because in the void, countless mysterious runes were densely packed. They were dazzling and mysterious as they emitted divine light. Like a net, they completely enveloped the void where the sages' dojos were located, making it impossible for anyone to see them clearly. Just as everyone was puzzled, another change occurred. Boom, 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 boom. In the distant chaos outside the heavens, there were suddenly 4 supreme dermic powers that broke through layers of the void and rushed over, landing in the 4 Saint dojos. The 5 saints of the 3 pure ones, Zhu and Ti, made their move. As for why Her Highness Nuwa did not make a move, that was because after Empress Nuwa became a saint, she directly moved the dojo to the chaos outside the heavens, the Jinxiu heaven that she had created herself. Therefore, Empress Nuwa did not have a Taoist temple in the great desolate world. It was precisely because of this that the retreat of the great mystical abilities from the primordial world had nothing to do with him. After all, he was no longer in the primordial world. A saint's attack was naturally extraordinary. Just as the 4 streams of dermic powers were about to reach the mysterious rune, they suddenly collapsed and turned into strands of connate origin energy that merged with the mysterious rune. With the help of the saint's power, the power of the mysterious rune suddenly skyrocketed. It became more and more resplendent, and an endless mysterious aura bloomed. In just an instant, it connected with the sky. Whoosh! Brilliant light screens appeared outside the dojos of the saints, isolating them from the desolation realm. Whoosh, whoosh, after the light screen flickered for a moment, it disappeared into the void. The towering Kunlun Mountain and the other saints' dojos reappeared in front of everyone's eyes. After that, the primordial world returned to peace, as if everything that had happened just now was an illusion. However, all living beings knew that everything was different. Although the saints' dojo was still standing there, it was as if there was a layer of gauze between it and the crowd, making it ethereal. The void where they were located had been completely separated from the primordial world under the isolation of the mysterious rune. In other words, the saints' dojo could be said to be independent of the world. Their position seemed to have not moved, but in fact, they were separated from all living beings by endless time and space. A cultivator whose cultivation had not reached the level of Daluo Jingxian, Even if the Kunlun Mountain was right in front of him, he would not be able to get close to the Kunlun Mountain even if he spent his entire life. The world where they were located was completely different. The Kunlun Mountain and the other saints' dojos had become unreachable in the eyes of all living beings. That was how it should be. After all, the level they were at, it was not something that all living beings should come into contact with. The saints' actions today could be said to have a great impact on the primordial world. At the very least, the powerful beings who had been hesitating about whether to evacuate the primordial world had already made up their minds. Sigh. It's the will of the heavens. Let's leave. After making up their minds, the group of powerful beings acted straightforwardly. Without any hesitation, they cut off the connection between their dojos and the primordial world. Just like the saints' dojo, they were completely isolated from the primordial world. It was also from that day onwards that the phenomena of the primordial world were endless. Almost every year, powerful beings would leave the primordial world with their dojos. This situation lasted for tens of thousands of years. It was only when the living beings of the primordial world were about to get used to it that it gradually decreased and even disappeared. After the saint led the dojos and left the primordial world, all the powerful beings of the primordial world finally left the primordial world after a period of time. For a moment, the primordial world fell silent. Without the suppression of the powerful beings, the living beings of the primordial world felt as if a huge rock had disappeared from their hearts. They were completely relaxed and their entire bodies were clear. Even the laws of heaven and earth became more active after the great divine ability masters left. It was as if they had been suppressed when the powerful beings were around. Now that they had finally relaxed, they wanted to be active as much as they could. In fact, that was indeed the case. The strength of the powerful beings was really too strong. They had almost reached the end of the great Tao. Therefore, even if they had no intention of suppressing the laws of heaven and earth, their great Tao was there. That powerful aura naturally affected the laws of heaven and earth and interfered with their normal operation. The strong were enough to change the world. It was not a joke. It really existed. Obviously, the powerful beings had this ability. The influence of one or two powerful beings on the laws of heaven and earth might be limited. However, when hundreds or even thousands of powerful beings appeared in the primordial world at the same time, their influence on the laws of heaven and earth could be imagined. It could be said that all living beings in the primordial world were living under the shadow of the great Tao of the powerful beings. That was obviously not a good thing for all living beings. If they could not get rid of the shadow of others in the future, how could they attain the Tao? That was also one of the reasons why there were fewer and fewer experts in the primordial world. Therefore, the departure of the powerful beings was also a good thing for all living beings in the primordial world. At the very least, without the suppression of the great Tao of the powerful beings, it would be much easier for all living beings to cultivate than before. With the departure of the powerful beings, the laws of heaven and earth became more and more active. The primordial world welcomed a long-awaited golden age of cultivation. Everyone was immersed in cultivation. And this, for Feng Zichen, it was just the beginning. Although the powerful beings had evacuated the primordial world as a whole, it did not mean that they had completely cut off their connection with the primordial world. The boundless space-time that spanned across their dojos and the primordial world was obstructing the living beings of the primordial world, not them. With the ability of the powerful beings, they could completely ignore the endless space-time and directly interfere with the primordial world. The so-called evacuation of the primordial world only meant that their true bodies were not in the primordial world, but their power could still affect the primordial world. In other words, in fact, their so-called evacuation of the primordial world was only in the situation, not in fact. But what was the use of evacuating in the situation? Therefore, the next step of Feng Zichen's plan was to promote the implementation of heaven and earth isolation. With the almost invincible luck of the human clan, he could forcefully cut off the passage between heaven and earth, causing heaven and earth to be no longer connected. At that time, any existence outside the primordial world who wanted to interfere with the primordial world would definitely be attacked by the luck of the human clan. At that time, the primordial world would be truly safe. After all, even the saints coveted the luck of the protagonists of heaven and earth and would not hesitate to throw away their dignity to fight for it. From this, it could be seen that the terrifying luck of the human clan was definitely not something that the powerful beings could contend with. The departure of the powerful beings had the greatest impact on the primordial world. It could be said that the human clan was the one that had the greatest impact on the primordial world. With the support of the human clan's luck, Xuanyuan's strength had reached the level of half-step primordial chaos, far surpassing the level of Shenong's sage-to-be perfection. That's right. After this internal strife, the human clan had completely suppressed the myriad clans and gathered the luck of the myriad clans. It could be said that their luck had experienced an unprecedented increase. Under this influence, Xuanyuan's strength naturally rose as well. From the original realm of sage-to-be perfection, he had reached the realm of half-step primordial chaos. With such strength, in the era when the powerful beings left the primordial world en masse, he could definitely be called invincible. He was really invincible. The heavens and the earth did not count. With such an expert holding down the fort, who among the myriad clans would dare to act rashly? It was precisely because of this that the human clan entered a period of rapid development, and their strength soared exponentially. Of course, the reason for this outcome, it was all based on the situation of suppressing the myriad clans. In the past, although there were many resources in the primordial world, there were even more races in the primordial world. Everyone divided a little, and there wasn't much that they actually got. But now, the situation was completely different. As the human clan became stronger and stronger, the previous model was obviously no longer applicable. Now, more than half of the resources in the primordial world had entered the pockets of the human clan. None of the myriad clans dared to compete with them. After Xianyuan defeated Qiyu, in order to obtain the forgiveness of the human clan, the myriad clans began to pay tribute to the human clan. Just these tributes were a shocking amount of wealth, enough to cultivate a large number of experts for the human clan. It could be said that the myriad clans were using their own blood to support the human clan. In this way, it was difficult for the human clan not to be strong. Logically speaking, Xianyuan should be satisfied that the myriad clans had done so much. But in fact, Xianyuan was far from satisfied. He really wanted to take this opportunity to swallow the myriad clans in one fell swoop so that he could completely establish the supreme status of the human clan. But the reality made him extinguish this crazy idea. Although the myriad clans were no match for the might of the human clan, this did not mean that the myriad clans did not have the strength to fight against the human clan. If they really wanted to fight, the human clan might be able to destroy the myriad clans, but the price they would have to pay was definitely something that the current human clan could not bear. Perhaps the human clan would be unable to recover from this setback. Therefore, considering the consequences of doing so, Xianyuan had no choice but to suppress the thoughts in his heart and feign civility with the myriad clans. This situation lasted until the 950th year of the human emperor's calendar, which was also the 950th year of Xuanyuan's power, before there was a change. The 950th year of the human emperor's calendar had reached the end of the human emperor's rule. It was also at this time that the human emperor began to gradually put down the power in his hands and focused on cultivating the Tao. For this reason, human emperor Xianyuan specially issued a decree to invite the experts of the myriad clans to come to the human emperor's palace to discuss the Tao. Everyone could exchange what they needed to reach a higher realm. After receiving the order, the experts of the myriad clans did not dare to be negligent. They all set off for the human emperor's palace. At first, as the decree said, human emperor Xianyuan invited everyone over to discuss the Tao with his fellow Taoists. But as time passed, the atmosphere of the Tao discussion gradually changed. The reason was that during the discussion, human emperor Xianyuan had vaguely mentioned more than once that he was reluctant to part with the feelings of his subjects. He hoped that after he ascended to the heaven realm, everyone could leave with him. How could the experts of the myriad clans agree to this? Everyone had families and businesses. How could they abandon their families and businesses and follow human emperor Xianyuan to the heaven realm to start anew? Wasn't this a joke? Besides, If they really left, what would happen to their race? They were afraid that as soon as they left, the human race would swallow their race. Moreover, it was different from the primordial world that had undergone several changes, causing the number of experts to decrease. The heaven realm was where most of the top experts of the primordial world were gathered. With their strength, it was fine for them to dominate the primordial world. But once they reached the heaven realm, they were really nothing. There were many in the heaven realm who were stronger than them. There was a saying that it was better to be the head of a chicken than the back of a cow. Didn't they want to be the overlords of the primordial world? Why did they have to go to the heaven realm to be bullied? Due to the above reasons, the experts of the myriad clans were unwilling to leave the primordial world. As for the easier world, it gradually became unsuitable for Daluo Jinxian's life. The experts of the myriad clans expressed that they did not care at all. With the foundation of the myriad clans, it was impossible to contend against the easier world. However, it was still possible to support a few Daluo Jinxian. They had the conditions to stay in the primordial world. Since that was the case, why should they leave? But if they didn't leave, how could they explain to human Emperor Xianyuan? After all, he had already hinted. They couldn't just ignore it, right? For a moment, the experts of the myriad clans were in a dilemma. Wait, ignore it. In a trance, the experts of the myriad clans thought of a solution. Just pretend to be stupid. Anyway, you, Xianyuan, didn't say it directly, so we'll pretend that we didn't hear your hint at all. Chapter 628. Wasn't it just pretending to be stupid? Who didn't know how to do that? With this thought in mind, the experts of the myriad races also did the same. After that, no matter how Emperor Xianyuan hinted, they all pretended not to understand. And regarding this, Xianyuan didn't show too much anger. His actions were originally a test. The reaction of the experts of the myriad races was completely within his expectations. If the experts of the myriad races agreed so easily, that would be a problem. Of course, this wasn't the only reason why Xianyuan wasn't angry. With the strength of the human race, how could the experts of the myriad races disobey what he wanted to do? In other words, the reason why Xianyuan hinted to everyone was not to ask for their opinions, but to give them a heads up in advance so that they wouldn't be unprepared when they ascended to the heaven realm with him. As for whether the experts of the myriad races agreed or not, was that important? After all, the primordial world relied on strength to speak. The weak only needed to follow the rules of the strong. They didn't have much choice. Xuanyuan's fist was bigger and harder than the experts of the myriad races. The experts of the myriad races couldn't compare to him. Then they had to listen to Xianyuan. This was the sorrow of the weak. The fate of the myriad races was destined the moment Qiyu was defeated. They were destined to withdraw from the stage of the primordial world to make room for the human race. This was the will of heaven and the general trend. Anyone who disobeyed would be smashed to pieces by the surging momentum of the situation. The experts of the myriad races couldn't defeat Xianyuan, so they could only follow his rules. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to bear the price of breaking the rules. It was precisely because of this that Xianyuan wasn't in a hurry. Everything was already destined, so why should he be in a hurry? The pitiful experts of the myriad races were complacent because of Xuanyuan's concession, but they didn't notice the destined future at all. It was really sad. Just like that, under the perfunctory interaction between the two sides, time passed day by day. The human race would also welcome its first great emperor. Time passed slowly. In the blink of an eye, 10,000 years had passed. At this time, it had been 960,000 years since the human emperor Xianyuan took power. And the human emperor had only been in power for 1,000,000 years. In other words, there were still more than 40,000 years before Xuanyuan's merit would be complete. 960,000 years of the human emperor calendar, the era of Xuanyuan's rule had finally reached the end of the Great Era. On this day, on the North Star, Feng Zichen suddenly opened his eyes. The time has come. It's time for the Motherf *King Human King to reincarnate as well. With a thought, Feng Zichen formed a hand seal and pointed at the void. Suddenly, boundless Tao patterns separated from Feng Zichen's fingertips. They were densely packed and embedded in the void, slowly opening a passage. Rumble! There was a sudden clap of thunder, shaking the void. Streams of terrifying reincarnation power surged out from the passageway, distorting everything. That was Reincarnation Passage. After so many years, Feng Zichen's understanding of the path of reincarnation had deepened. In the blink of an eye, a reincarnation passage could be opened. On this point, compared to when he opened up the reincarnation passage, he had to rely on the authority of the 6 paths of reincarnation disc. It was many times stronger. Whoosh! Just as the reincarnation passage was formed, a dragon-shaped true spirit suddenly appeared at the origin of the North Star. The dragon-shaped true spirit disappeared in a flash. It was wrapped in an imperial purple chi and directly entered the reincarnation passage. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared. This scene meant that the first Motherf * King Human King had reincarnated. Rumble! On this day, the destiny of the human race shook, and the torch flame appeared automatically. It burned fiercely in the long river of destiny like the sun, blooming with bright light, illuminating all corners of the universe. Endless strange phenomena evolved, and it did not stop for years. At the same time, the dragon race, which had not moved for a long time, began to undergo inexplicable changes the moment the dragon-shaped true spirit entered the reincarnation passage. Rumble! Amidst a violent roar, the dragon race's destiny appeared without warning, stirring up the wind and clouds in the 4 seas. Roar, 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 roar. For a time, above the 4 seas, because of the inexplicable appearance of the dragon race's destiny, a series of majestic dragon roars suddenly sounded. The sudden change caused the sea tribe to fall into a daze. They had no idea what had happened. As for the dragon emperor and the elders of the dragon race, when they saw this inexplicable change, they vaguely understood something. They silently appeared in the depths of the void, quietly observing the changes in the situation. Rumble! Just as the sea tribe was in a daze, the scene changed again. Endless dragon chi burst out from the void, forming a huge and glorious door in the sky above the 4 seas. Dragon Gate! The Dragon Gate of the dragon race. Under the situation where no one summoned it, the Dragon Gate appeared automatically, like the door of the great Tao, towering above the 4 seas, exuding endless majesty. Chi, in an instant, endless divine light, burst out from the Dragon Gate. It was incomparably dazzling, illuminating the entire 4 seas. The divine light was dazzling and crystal clear. It was like a drizzle, like a stream of light, slowly falling from the void, sprinkling the entire 4 seas. Almost all the sea tribe was bathed in the dazzling divine light. This was a gift. The Dragon Gate's gift to the sea tribe was used to enhance their bloodline. Whoosh, 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 the divine light entered their bodies and continuously baptized the bodies of the sea tribe, purifying their bloodline, causing them to continuously transform into a true dragon. Although this transformation was far less intense than directly leaping over the Dragon Gate, it could save the sea tribe thousands of years of bitter cultivation and further enhance their bloodline. To the sea tribe, improving their bloodline was more important than improving their cultivation. Therefore, the appearance of the Dragon Gate this time was no less than a great opportunity for the sea tribe. Perhaps, after digesting what they had obtained this time, when they leaped over the Dragon Gate next time, they would undoubtedly be much more confident. The luck of the human race and the dragon race changed at the same time. It would be an insult to everyone's IQ if they said that there was no connection between the two. But what could they do if they knew that there was a connection? Those who were qualified to know the reason for all of this would not poke their nose into other people's business to avoid being involved in karma. And those who were not qualified to know would not poke their nose into other people's business. Because regardless of whether it was the human race or the dragon race, they were existences that they could not afford to offend. The strange phenomenon of the two races gradually disappeared after the birth of the imperial grandson Xianxia. The imperial grandson Xianxia, the ancient dragon race's dragon sovereign was the reincarnation of the water dragon. He was the patriarch of the water dragon bloodline of the dragon race and the best of the 3 generations of the dragon race. His birth marked that the relationship between the dragon race and the human race had taken a step closer and truly become inseparable. One could see that, with the birth of the imperial grandson Xianxia, in the long river of fate, the 9-clawed divine dragon that represented the luck of the dragon race and the eternal torch that represented the luck of the human race gradually approached each other. A sparkling and translucent thread suddenly appeared and connected the luck of the 2 races together. It could be seen with the naked eye. Strands of luck flowed in the thread and flowed into each other's bodies, blending with each other to show the inseparable relationship between the 2 races. The imperial grandson Xianxia was extremely talented, and his cultivation talent was even more extraordinary. He was born less than 100 years ago, but he had already cultivated to the celestial immortal realm. He was even invincible among the younger generation of the myriad races. He was faintly known as the second Xianyuan. Human Emperor Xianyuan liked this grandson very much, so he brought him along and personally taught him. He faintly seemed to be grooming him as his successor. Of course, Xianxia did not disappoint Xianyuan. He used his outstanding ability to win the approval of the elders of the human race and the destiny of the human race, making him the legitimate successor of the human race. The primordial world did not count years. In the blink of an eye, 30,000 years had passed since Xianxia was born. At this time, it was already the 990,000th year of the human emperor's calendar. At this time, human Emperor Xianyuan had already given up all the power in his hands and handed it all over to Xianxia. In other words, although Xianxia did not have the name of the human emperor, he already had the power of the human emperor. As for Xianxia, after many years of training, he had already become a qualified emperor. Over the years, Xianyuan had seen Xianxia's performance and was very satisfied with him. It was also from this time that Xianyuan was completely relieved and began to carry out his plan. In the 990,000th year of the human emperor's calendar, a huge change suddenly happened in the primordial world. Myriad races wanted to join forces to suppress the human emperor Xianyuan. This move undoubtedly shocked all living beings in the primordial world. And the reason for all of this was all based on an order from Xianyuan. It was in the last 10,000 years of Xianyuan's power. This invincible emperor of Earth suddenly issued an order. Daluo Jingxian of the myriad races was ordered to go to the heaven realm with him in 10,000 years. It was this order which caused an uproar in the primordial world, and a hint of betrayal arose. Everything was fine. Who was willing to abandon their family and run to the heaven realm? In the past, it was fine to hide the hints, and everyone could still pretend to be stupid. But now, Xianyuan had directly made it clear, and the experts of the myriad races could not continue to pretend to be stupid. To go or not. They had to give the human emperor Xianyuan an answer. In the beginning, the experts of the myriad races still had a glimmer of hope in their hearts, thinking that Xianyuan would not be so ruthless. Therefore, they all went to the ancestral land of the human race to worship Xianyuan, trying to use all kinds of reasons to refuse to go to the heaven realm. Unfortunately, no matter how reasonable and perfect the reasons they found, they could not move Xianyuan. At this time, the experts of the myriad races already understood that the human emperor Xianyuan was determined to take them all away. It was also the fault of the experts of the myriad races for going too far back then. For their own interests, they did not hesitate to provoke internal strife in the human race to oust Xianyuan. It was precisely after experiencing this that Xianyuan knew the harm of the experts of the myriad races. In order to not let his experience be repeated by the juniors. Xianyuan had already sworn in his heart that he would take away all the experts of the myriad races at all costs so that he could clear the obstacles for the future generations. When Shennong ascended the throne, the experts of the myriad races were dissatisfied. When he ascended the throne, the experts of the myriad races were disdainful. These pierced Xuanyuan's heart deeply. At the same time, This also made him understand that the so-called submission of the myriad races was completely unreliable. The one that the myriad races respected and feared was him. Once he left, the faces of the myriad races would quickly change. This point, when Shen Nong and he ascended the throne, the myriad races had already shown it vividly. Therefore, this group of scourges had to be eliminated. Even at all costs, they had to be eliminated. Seeing that Xuanyuan's determination could not be shaken, the experts of the myriad races were naturally unwilling to go to the heaven realm. Therefore, after they returned to the myriad races, they all entered a state of preparation for battle, intending to fight to the death with Xianyuan. The experts of the myriad races were able to cultivate to the realm of Daluo Jingxian and even the realm of Sage to be. Naturally, they did not lack bravery. Usually, the reason why they acted so weak and let Xianyuan do whatever he wanted, that was because Xuanyuan's actions did not cross their bottom line. Therefore, they could endure it. But now, everything was different. The experts of the myriad races had been forced to a dead end by Xianyuan. There was no way out. Therefore, of course, they had to fight to the death. The experts of the myriad races were ready to join forces and attack the human emperor Xianyuan together. This was to express their determination to stay in the untainted land. But before they were ready, someone made a move first. The person who made a move was Great Witch Xing Tian. The #1 warrior of the ancient witch race revealed his huge true body of the Great Witch. He waved the ganchi in his hand and brazenly charged into the ancestral land of the human race. Boom, boom, boom. Great Witch Xing Tian took a step forward and crossed an infinite distance. In just a few steps, he had already arrived in front of the human emperor palace and Xianyuan. Xianyuan, you little brat, die. In front of the human emperor palace, Xing Tian swung down his axe, intending to split Xianyuan and the human emperor palace in half. The axe in Xing Tian's hand was transformed from a fragment of Panga's axe. It had the power to split the sky. Even Dong Huangtai would be injured if he was caught off guard by the axe, let alone Xianyuan. Therefore, if Xing Tian's axe really hit Xianyuan, he would be seriously injured even if he didn't die. Great Witch Xing Tian, you are too presumptuous. The axe in Xing Tian's hand was transformed from a fragment of Panga's axe. It had the power to split the sky. Even Dong Huangtai would be injured if he was caught off guard by the axe, let alone Xianyuan. Therefore, if Xing Tian's axe really hit Xianyuan, he would be seriously injured even if he didn't die. Great Witch Xing Tian, you are too presumptuous. The axe in Xing Tian's hand was transformed from a fragment of Panga's axe. It had the power to split the sky. Even Dong Huangtai would be injured if he was caught off guard by the axe, let alone Xianyuan. Therefore, if Xing Tian's axe really hit Xianyuan, he would be seriously injured even if he didn't die. Great Witch Xing Tian, you are too presumptuous. The axe in Xing Tian's hand was transformed from a fragment of Panga's axe. It had the power to split the sky. Even Dong Huangtai would be injured if he was caught off guard by the axe, let alone Xianyuan. Therefore, if Xing Tian's axe really hit Xianyuan, he would be seriously injured even if he didn't die. Great Witch Xing Tian, you are too presumptuous. The axe in Xing Tian's hand was transformed from a fragment of Panga's axe. It had the power to split the sky. Even Dong Huangtai would be injured if he was caught off guard by the axe, let alone Xianyuan. Therefore, if Xing Tian's axe really hit Xianyuan, he would be seriously injured even if he didn't die. Great Witch Xing Tian, you are too presumptuous. Chapter 629. The current Xing Tian was not much weaker than the ancestral shaman back then. There were only a handful of people in the primordial world who could defeat him. With such powerful strength, it would not be a simple matter to help him break down and then rebuild, because his physical body was too strong. It had reached the level of a supreme-grade innate spirit treasure. Unless a primordial chaos expert or a primordial chaos expert came with a primordial chaos treasure, it was absolutely impossible to hurt him at all. Therefore, it was not a simple matter for Xing Tian to break and rebuild. because there were not many people in the primordial world who could do this. Moreover, even if someone could break Xianxia's physical body, why would he help Xianxia surpass his limit and not completely destroy him? One had to know that the shaman tribe had a bunch of enemies in the primordial world. They would definitely not be willing to see the shaman tribe have another supreme expert. Why don't I find ancestral shaman Hutu or ancestral shaman Xianming to try? After finding the method from the ghost emperor of Fengdu, Xianxia's first thought was to find ancestral shaman Hutu or ancestral shaman Xianming to help him break and rebuild. However, the moment this thought appeared in his mind, it was extinguished by the ghost emperor of Fengdu. Fellow Taoist Xianxian, although goddess Hutu and ancestral shaman Xianming are strong, they are of the same race as you. Can you really stimulate your fighting spirit and fight to the death with them? Looking at Xianxian, who was eager to try, the ghost emperor of Fengdu could not help but pour cold water on him. Breaking the physical body was only secondary. The important thing was how to surpass one's limits in a battle and see the path of the great Tao. Live through death and see the true self. If he wanted to do this, he could only cut off all the fetters and fight to the death with the determination to have a glimmer of hope. If Xianxian chose to fight with the two ancestral shamans, then, with their relationship, both sides would definitely have some scruples in their hearts and would not be able to fight with all their strength. In this way, it would violate Xianxian's original intention. Therefore, he could not take it. Fellow Taoist is right. In a battle with the ancestral shamans, whether it is me or the two ancestral shamans, we can't completely let go and fight to the death. After hearing Fengdu Ghost Emperor's words, Xianxian thought that this was the case. Both sides were so close, so how could they kill each other? But apart from the ancestral sorcerer, where could he find someone who could help him break through his limits? While feeling depressed, Xianxia subconsciously looked at the Fengdu Ghost the Arch. When he looked, Xianxian couldn't help but feel enlightened. Right now, wasn't there one? With this thought in mind, Xianxian did the same. He took a step forward, bowed to the Fengdu Ghost Emperor, and said, "Please lend me a hand, Taoist brother." In Xianxian's opinion, Fengdu Ghost Emperor's strength must be unfathomable for him to be able to suppress everyone and sit on the throne of the Netherworld Realm's master. With his ability, perhaps it could help him break through his limits. Good fellow. Seeing Xianxian's actions, Fengdu Ghost Emperor exclaimed in his heart, "What a guy!" Xianxian's mind was really fast. He actually wanted him to make a move. It had to be said that this was a good idea. With his strength, he could indeed help Xianxian break through the limit. Unfortunately, Xianxian's matter was related to Feng Zichen's future plan. Therefore, Fengdu Ghost Emperor did not intend to help him. Thus, Fengdu Ghost Emperor said to Xianxian, "Fellow Taoist Xianxian, it's not that poor Wei doesn't want to help you. It's that poor Wei can't help you." Back then, when the Netherworld was first formed, in order to stabilize this land, the ancestral sorcerers elected Poor Wei as the lord of the Netherworld. Poor Wei is grateful for the kindness of the ancestral sorcerers and specially made an oath that she would never hurt the sorcerer clan for no reason. Therefore, I hope that Poor Wei can't agree to your request. Perhaps the Fengdu Ghost Emperor's words could only be said to be half true and half false, but he absolutely could not take action to suppress Xianxian. That was because the sorcerer clan had the most power in the Netherworld. If Xianxian really died at his hands, then no matter what the reason was, the entire sorcerer clan would definitely hate him. If this was not handled well, his position as the lord of the Netherworld would come to an end. Think about it, if a person in power was hated by the most powerful force under him, could his orders really be completely carried out? It would probably not be long before he would be overthrown. Therefore, no matter what, Xianxian could not die at the hands of Fengdu Ghost Emperor. Xianxian was reckless and didn't consider fellow Taoists' difficulties. Xianxian was not a fool. With a slight hint from Fengdu Ghost Emperor, he figured out the reason and hurriedly apologized to Fengdu Ghost Emperor. It's good that fellow Taoist doesn't blame Poor Wei for refusing. Fengdu Ghost Emperor waved his hand and said, "The ancestral sorcerer can't help, and fellow Taoist can't help either. Then, the only one left is fellow Taoist Mingi. I just don't know if he can help. Xing Tian sighed in disappointment and said with some emotion. Hiss. Hearing this, Fengdu Ghost Emperor could not help but feel a toothache. Xing Tian had a wide range of friends. He even knew an ice block like Patriarch Mingi. However, he could not help. Cough cough. Fellow Taoist Xing Tian, don't forget that the Azura tribe is also in the Netherworld. After coughing a few times, Fengdu Ghost Emperor reminded him. If Patriarch Mingi really killed Xing Tian, the Azura tribe and the Sorcerer tribe would definitely fight. That's true. After Fengdu Ghost Emperor's reminder, Xing Tian could not help but feel distressed. He could not help this one. He could not help that one either. In short, the great divine abilities that he was familiar with could not help. Then, he could not provoke the famous great divine abilities of the primordial world for no reason and let them fight with him. My head hurts. Xing Tian could not help but complain softly in his heart. Fellow Taoist Xing Tian, don't worry. Have you forgotten human Emperor Xianyuan? The enmity of Qiyu is still in front of you. You have to take revenge. At this moment, Fengdu Ghost Emperor felt that the time was right, so he spoke up. That's right. How could I forget Xianyuan? Hearing this, Xing Tian's eyes lit up. He felt that all his frustrations had disappeared in an instant. This guy was good. With a Khanate cardinal treasure in his hand and a half-step primordial chaos great divine ability, wasn't he the best whetstone? Moreover, there was still a grudge between the two sides. It was completely reasonable to attack him. However, while he was happy, Xing Tian could not help but frown again. The human race and the sorcerer tribe were allies. If he attacked the human emperor, regardless of whether he won or lost, it would cause irreparable damage to the relationship between the two races. Then, did he really have to do that? For a moment, Xing Tian hesitated. Fellow Taoist, are you worried that if you attack Xianyuan, it will affect the relationship between the human race and the sorcerer tribe? Fengdu Ghost Emperor seemed to have seen the hesitation in Xing Tian's heart, so he asked. That's right. Xing Tian nodded and said, there was nothing to hide about this. In that case, then, fellow Taoist, you should go. Shaking his head, Fengdu Ghost Emperor smiled. What? Hearing this, Xing Tian, who thought that he would hear some wise advice, could not help but be shocked. Brother Fengdu, was he trying to sow discord between the human race and the sorcerer tribe? It was not Xing Tian's fault for thinking too much. The words of Fengdu Ghost Emperor were too easy to misunderstand. Fellow Taoist, poor Wei, let me ask you. What are your intentions for going to the human race this time? Ignoring Xing Tian's complicated emotions, Fengdu Ghost Emperor asked him directly. To use Xuanyuan's hand to break the limit. Xing Tian replied. Then, do you have the confidence to win? Fengdu Ghost Emperor continued to ask. When he said the word yes, Xing Tian's tone was unusually firm. It was obvious that he was confident. According to what you said, you are going to break through the realm, not to destroy the relationship between the two races. In that case, why are you hesitating? After the battle with human Emperor Xianyuan, if you successfully break the limit, you will be able to reach a higher realm. At that time, who will think that you are here to kill the human emperor? All living beings will think that you are here to achieve the Tao. Xianyuan has not fallen, and you have not fallen, and you have even advanced further with the help of this. Under such circumstances, how can the friendship between the two races be damaged? The truth is exactly the opposite. If such a situation really happens, not only will the friendship between the two races not be affected, but it will also become closer. But under such circumstances, Xing Tian, you are hesitating. Does this mean that you, Xing Tian, don't have the confidence to win as you said? At the end of his words, Fengdu Ghost Emperor's tone became more and more severe. It was like a heavy hammer, hammering Xing Tian's heart word by word. Thank you for your advice, Brother Taoist. Xing Tian understands. Fengdu Ghost Emperor's words were like a bolt from the blue. They resounded in Xing Tian's mind and completely extinguished all his hesitation. As long as he successfully broke his limit in the battle with Xianyuan and was not killed by him, or he did not kill Xianyuan. Then, the two of them would be friends based on martial arts. Since that was the case, the relationship between the two races would not be damaged because of this. On the contrary, this was proof of their close relationship. After thinking through this point, Xianxia could not help but be enlightened. There was no longer a trace of hesitation in his heart. Endless fighting spirit emerged and completely filled his entire heart. Then, he bowed respectfully to the Ghost Emperor of Fengdu and said, "Thank you. Xianxia will definitely return successfully in this battle." After saying that, Xianxia turned and left the imperial palace, rushing towards the human race. "Xianxia, have you really made up your mind? You have to know, your next action concerns the future relationship between the human race and the sorcerer race, and also the future safety of the untainted land. So, you can only succeed this time. You are not allowed to fail. Otherwise, there will be a long war between the human race and the sorcerer race, which will affect the entire untainted land. The untainted land will change because of you, and billions of people will die because of you. And you, Xianxia, will be the fuse of everything. You will become the sinner of the sorcerer race, and even the entire untainted land. In the face of such consequences, I wonder if you, Xianxia, can really maintain the belief that you will definitely win?" On the Emperor's throne, Fengdu Ghost Emperor's deep voice came slowly. It was like a heavy hammer that fell on Xianxia's heart, bringing him heavy pressure. In a trance, the scene of the great battle between the human race and the sorcerer race seemed to appear in front of Xianxia's eyes. Endless magical powers were unleashed, mountains and rivers were shattered, and countless people died tragically. The wails and cries kept echoing in his ears. It was like crying and complaining, as if it was accusing him. It was because of his actions that countless tragedies happened in the human world. For a moment, Xianxia's body seemed to be pressed down by thousands of immortal divine mountains. His footsteps became extremely heavy. But even so, it could not shake Xianxia's footsteps. Xianxia will definitely succeed this time. I will definitely not let this result be reflected in reality. A shout came from Xianxia's mouth, representing his incomparably firm belief. Then, a bright light rose from Xianxia's body and enveloped him, piercing through all the illusions. That light was the most moving light. It was even more dazzling than the sun. It was so dazzling that people could not look directly at it. Even the powerful Fengdu Ghost Emperor, who was comparable to a primordial chaos expert, could not help but look sideways at it and marvel at its greatness. This was the light of faith. His appearance had nothing to do with strength. This was a realm of the soul. Only when one's Tao heart was pure to a certain extent could it be reflected. Under that unparalleled pressure, Xianxia's fighting spirit did not weaken. Instead, it rose higher and higher. It was as if that huge pressure had brought him unparalleled motivation. The combination of his state of mind and fighting spirit made Xianxia's belief become more and more firm. As a result, it underwent a transformation and gave birth to the light of faith. And this was the beginning of breaking the limit. The appearance of the light of faith marked the beginning of Xianxia's transformation. Once his transformation was completed, he would be the new primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian of the primordial world, an existence like a Tao Lord. The battle with Xianyuan was the opportunity for him to transform. This battle, Xianxia would complete a gorgeous transformation. He believed that after a period of time, the primordial world would once again give birth to an existence that would shock the future. Is this really okay? With such a huge pressure on his shoulders, can Xianxia really successfully break the limit and complete the transformation? Not long after Xianxia left, the Lady of Earth walked out of the dark and asked the Ghost Emperor of Fengdu worriedly. It turned out that from the beginning to the end, the Lady of Earth had been hiding in the dark and silently watching the development of the situation. That was true. It was related to Xianxia, the number one magus below the ancestral magus. How could the Lady of Earth not come? Empress, there's no need to worry. Believe in Xianxia. That pressure can suppress anyone, but it can't suppress Xianxia. Instead, it will stimulate his fighting spirit and make him even stronger. Isn't the light of faith the best proof? Unlike the Lady of Earth's worries, the Ghost Emperor of Fengdu was full of confidence in Xianxia. After all, he was the first man to be crowned as the god of war in the later generations. That's true. As the first great magus to be born and an existence that was favored by Panga's axe, Xianxia's potential is far beyond our imagination. He is not inferior to us ancestral magi at all. Looking at the axe in Xianxia's hand, the Lady of Earth nodded thoughtfully. Chapter 630. Xianxia. He was the most special existence in the wizard tribe. He was the first great wizard born from Panga's heart, and the most powerful wizard besides the ancestral wizard. Of course, Xianxia was special not because he was the first great wizard, but because of the Xianxian axe in his hand. Although the Xianxian axe was only an upper-grade primordial spiritual treasure, its killing power was not inferior to any supreme-grade primordial spiritual treasure. Even the physical body of a primordial chaos expert could be broken open by him. And all of this was because the Xianxian axe was formed from part of the fragments of Panga's axe. Back then, the ultimate treasure of the chaos, Panga's axe, was shattered because it couldn't withstand the backlash of the world. Its main body evolved into the three ultimate treasures of the world, while the remaining fragments were scattered in the untainted world and evolved into various special connate spiritual treasures. And the Xianxian axe was the most powerful of these primordial spiritual treasures. Back then, Xianxia was born with the axe, which shocked the 12 ancestral wizards. Being born with the fragments of Panga's axe was a treatment that even Panga's son, the ancestral wizard, had never enjoyed. In a sense, Xianxia was someone who had obtained Panga's approval. His future was destined to be brilliant. Because of this, Xianxia's status in the wizard tribe was somewhat aloof, second only to the 12 ancestral wizards. After all, in the world, those who could be recognized by Pangu, how many? Xianxia had such an honor, which showed that he was extraordinary. Thinking of this, Hudu's confidence in Xianxia increased greatly. She was sure that he would break the limit, surpass the past, and step into a new realm. Thinking that the wizard tribe would soon have a great existence at the level of the primordial chaos pathmaster, even with her cultivation, Hudu could not help but feel happy. Taoist Zichen. Under your stimulation, Xianxia's state of mind has changed, and his strength has far surpassed the past. Under such circumstances, with Xuanyuan's strength, is there any hope of forcing Xianxia to his limit? In addition to being happy, Hudu could not help but feel a little worried. The current Xianxia's strength had already reached its peak. Even compared to the grand shaman of the past, he was not inferior. Xianyuan, on the other hand, had cultivated for less than 1,000,000 years. His half-step primordial chaos strength had been forcefully promoted by the human race's providence. In terms of comprehension of heaven and earth, battle experience, mastery of divine abilities, and so on, he was far inferior to Xianxia. Compared to Xianxia, Xuanyuan's only advantage was the Xianyuan sword in his hand. However, the heaven-punishing axe, it might not be inferior to the current Xianyuan sword. The gap between the two sides was so huge that Goddess Hutu couldn't help but worry. Could Xianyuan really fight against Xianxia? If Xianyuan was no match for Xianxia and couldn't push him to his limits, then all his previous efforts would have been in vain. Therefore, the Lady of Earth couldn't help but worry. Let's see if Xianyuan can force Xianxia to his limits. After a few laughs, the Ghost Emperor of Fengdu said leisurely, how could there be such a huge loophole in his plan? After all, Xianyuan was not alone. He had the entire human race behind him. He was the enemy of Xianyuan. He was the enemy of the entire human race. Not to mention that Xianxia's current strength was only comparable to the ancestral shaman of the past. Even if Dijiang was reborn, he might not be able to defeat the entire human race. The current human race was no longer the human race of the ancient times that was at the mercy of the demon race. After the efforts of the ancestors of the human race was already worthy of being the untainted world's overlord. On the shore of the East Sea, Xing Tian held a giant axe in his hand and charged over with hatred. He wanted to chop down human Emperor Xianyuan with his axe. Human Emperor Xianyuan was not afraid of this. Even if it was Xing Tian, who had been famous for a long time in the ancient times, he still dared to raise his sword and face it. Rumble! Boundless sword intent bloomed from the Xianyuan sword. It was vast and majestic, covering the entire void and forcefully repelling the Xing Tian axe that was chopping down. Xingteng, you're too presumptuous. Qiu's death was his own fault. How can you blame him? Moreover, how to deal with Qiu is an internal matter of the human race. What does it have to do with you? Xing Tian, retreat quickly. Considering the friendship between the human race and the witch race, I won't argue with you about this matter. You'd better retreat quickly. Don't make a mistake and hurt the friendship between the two races. Rising into the sky, Xianyuan shouted at Xing Tian. Even at this point, Xianyuan still didn't want to attack Xing Tian because of the friendship between the witch race and the human race. Therefore, he advised him to retreat. Unfortunately, although Xuanyuan's intention was good, Xing Tian, who had come to cause trouble, didn't care about his explanation. In fact, no matter what Xianyuan said, Xing Tian would attack. The so-called revenge of Qiu was just an excuse to attack Xianyuan. Others didn't know, but how could he not know the real situation of Qiu? Hee, what a stubborn guy. Let me see if your body is as stubborn as your mouth. As he spoke, Xing Tian waved the Xing Tian axe in his hand again and chopped towards Xianyuan. But this time, perhaps Xuanyuan's words had some effect. Xing Tian chose to fight in the depths of the void instead of the ancestral land of the human race. In this way, the aftermath of the battle wouldn't affect the ancestral land of the human race. Boom, 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 as soon as the two of them fought, a terrifying wave erupted, almost destroying everything and shaking the long river of time. Almost at the moment the battle began, the mighty figures and great magicians of the entire untainted land sensed the terrifying battle that had erupted in the depths of the void. Therefore, they released their divine thoughts in surprise and bewilderment, peeping into the depths of the void. They wanted to see which two powerful existences had broken out in a great battle. Then, everyone saw a scene that they couldn't believe. Human Emperor Xianyuan and Great Witch Xing Tian. They were fighting. And, looking at their posture, it didn't seem like they were sparring, but rather, it seemed like they were fighting to the death. This was interesting. The witch race and the human race had always been close allies. Now, the leaders of the two races suddenly fought in the depths of the void, fighting to the death. Did this mean that the relationship between the witch race and the human race was on the verge of collapse? What they saw, everyone couldn't help but think so. They just didn't know why the two races suddenly fell out with each other. However, although they were curious, it didn't affect their mood to watch a good show. The human race was the new overlord of the untainted land. The witch race was the old overlord of the untainted land. The leaders of the two races fought. It represented the confrontation between the old and new overlords of the untainted land. It was rare to see such a scene. Moreover, apart from the identities of the two sides, just the two half-step primordial chaos experts fighting to the death was worth watching. Watching the experts fight was also an opportunity for everyone. It could be of great help. One side was the undisputed overlord of the untainted land, and the other side was a great magician who had shaken the untainted land in the ancient times. The battle between the two could be said to have attracted everyone's anticipation. No matter why Xianyuan and Xing Tian fought, the experts of the myriad races were extremely excited. If one had to say who was the happiest about the break between the human race and the witch race, it would be the experts of the myriad races. Xianyuan forced them to leave the untainted land, forcing them to a dead end. As a result, the experts of the myriad races had the intention to rebel and make Xianyuan pay the price. If Xing Tian hadn't taken action first, the experts of the myriad races would have joined forces to attack Xianyuan. Of course, it was also because of Xing Tian's action that the experts of the myriad races changed their minds. They didn't act rashly and waited for the situation to develop. They knew how powerful Xing Tian was. If he took action, Xianyuan might not be his match. He might be killed by Xing Tian. In this way, wouldn't everyone be happy? Xianyuan had fallen, so who would take his orders to heart? If Xing Tian lost and was killed by Xianyuan, wouldn't that be even better? Xing Tian still had the two great gods behind him, ancestral with Xian Ming and Saint Hudu. Seeing that Xing Tian was killed by Xianyuan, how could they not take revenge? When that time came, Xianyuan should be worried about how to resist the revenge of the two great gods, instead of focusing on how to force them out of the untainted land. Clang! After a crisp sound, the Xianyuan sword and the Xingtian axe collided fiercely. In an instant, a terrifying power erupted and swept through everything. The depths of the void were stirred up into a mess, and the void turbulence was everywhere. Bang! After the attack, Xianyuan only felt a strong force surging from the Xianyuan sword. First, it cracked his thumb and index finger, and then it fiercely split him apart, crashing into the void turbulence. Huff! After a long while, Xianyuan crawled out of the void turbulence, breathing heavily. Under this attack, although he didn't suffer any injuries, his posture was a little embarrassing. In terms of realm, with the blessing of the human race, Xianyuan wasn't necessarily weaker than Xing Tian, and even faintly surpassed him. However, as everyone knew, the most powerful thing about the witch race was their physical bodies, not their magic power or realm. Xing Tian's physical body had been tempered for countless years. One could imagine how powerful it was. In the entire untainted land, there weren't many people whose physical bodies were stronger than his. What about Xianyuan? The fate of the human race could only improve his cultivation realm and bring him endless magic power. As for his physical body, the fate of the human race couldn't do anything. He needed to temper it himself. Then, without a doubt, Xuanyuan's physical body was tempered by himself. It definitely couldn't compare to Xing Tian's physical body. Therefore, in the battle just now, the huge gap between their physical bodies was directly reflected. Xing Tian's strength was far greater than Xuanyuan's, which was why he was sent flying with one blow. Similarly, this also made Xianyuan understand, if he fought with Xing Tian in close combat, he would definitely lose. The so-called human emperor, the strongest person in the untainted land, is this all you've got? Seeing that Xianyuan was repelled by his attack, Xing Tian couldn't help but mock him. This human emperor was too useless. He couldn't even take one blow from him. How could he give him the pressure to break through his limits? Facing Xing Tian's ridicule, Xianyuan snorted coldly and raised his sword again. However, this time, he had fully learned his lesson from the last time. He didn't fight with Xing Tian in close combat. Instead, he chose to attack from a distance and compete with Xing Tian's magic power. Xianyuan waved the Xianyuan sword in his hand at Xing Tian from a long distance. Swish, 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 swish. In an instant, an infinite sword intent burst out. It was extremely sharp, as if it could cut through everything. It swept towards Xing Tian in an overwhelming manner. In terms of sword magic, the human race had received the true teachings of Feng Zichen. Every move and style of Xianyuan contained a huge amount of power, which was compatible with the innate sword magic. The sword light surged over like the trajectory of the Great Path, which could cut through everything. It was extremely terrifying. Good. Now it's worth watching. Although the sword light was strong, Xing Tian was even fiercer. He raised the Xingtian axe in his hand and directly chopped at the sword light that was surging over. Compared to Xuanyuan's exquisite sword magic, Xing Tian's movements were a little simple. However, the Great Path was simple. Although Xing Tian's movements were simple, they all exerted his strength to the extreme. Xing Tian's axe chopped down, and what erupted was the purest physical strength, without a trace of impurities. Every strike was filled with the beauty of strength. As the saying goes, a strong person can defeat 10 skilled people. When one's strength was strong enough, there was nothing that he couldn't destroy. Therefore, Xing Tian's axe chopped down, and an infinite amount of power erupted, cutting the dazzling sword light into pieces on the spot. It turned into light spots that filled the sky and dissipated into thin air. What a strong physical body! In the distance, Xianyuan, who saw this scene, couldn't help but twitch the corner of his eyes. With his eyesight, it wasn't difficult to see that Xianxia didn't use any magic power in this attack. He only used the strength of his physical body. That was why it was so frightening. He was so strong without using magic power. If he used magic power, how strong would he be? Thinking of this, Xianyuan didn't dare to hold back. He immediately urged the luck of the human race to increase his strength to the limit. Ha! After a deep roar, wisps of fire suddenly rose from Xuanyuan's body and shone with the brilliance of the human path. In an instant, Xuanyuan's entire body changed. The mighty power of the human path filled his body, distorting space and time, emitting an infinite majesty. He was stronger, was infinitely close to the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. Kill! Infinite power surged in his body, causing Xuanyuan's confidence to increase greatly. He raised his sword and charged towards Xianxia again. Swish, swish, swish. Almost at the same time, countless sword lights that were even more vast and fierce than before bloomed from the Xianyuan sword. They shot towards Xianxia at an even faster speed. In an instant, the sword light had already arrived beside Xianxia. So fast, seeing the sword light coming towards him, Xianxia was about to resist when he felt that the sword light had completely enveloped him. Dang, 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 dang. The sound of iron being forged came from Xianxia's body. It was the sound of the sword light slashing on Xianxia's body. After a long while, the power of the sword light was finally exhausted and slowly dissipated into the void. At the same time, Xianxia's figure was revealed. Miserable. At this moment, Xianxia could only be described as miserable. His clothes had been completely shredded by the sword light. His entire body looked bloody, and there was not a single piece of good flesh on his body. It was as if he had been dismembered. Chapter 631. With the support of the human Dao light, the power of Xuanyuan's attack was raised to the limit, breaking Xianxia's almost invincible body. But even so, it was useless. Ah, pain, I haven't felt it in a long time. Xianxia was not angry that his body was broken. Instead, he became more and more excited. Because, under Xuanyuan's attack, he felt a pressure that he hadn't felt since the battle between the Lich and the demon. And the pressure was the driving force that forced him to improve. The battle has only just begun. Xianxia muttered. Suddenly, boundless magic power surged from his body and wrapped around the sword wound. Then, a shocking change occurred. Wherever the dermic power passed, the remaining sword intent on Xianxia's wound seemed to have suffered a huge blow and collapsed. His broken body was reborn as a result. In an instant, Xianxia's injury was completely healed. There was no trace of injury at all. Only the torn clothes were still hanging on Xianxia's body, as if to prove the existence of the battle just now. This is indestructible body. The supreme ability to be reborn from a drop of blood. In the void in the distance, Xianyuan couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice when he saw the changes on Xianxia's body. He was very familiar with this method. This was because it wasn't a supreme ability passed down by the Wu tribe, but a supreme ability that was naturally obtained when the path of gods and demons was cultivated to a very high level. When the path of gods and demons was cultivated to a very high level, the physical body would be integrated with the great path, so that part of the characteristics of the indestructible true spirit would be obtained. Even if the physical body was broken or destroyed, as long as there was a trace of blood left, the physical body could be reformed. The reason why Xianyuan was familiar with this ability was that the two emperors before him, Fuxi and Shennong, could easily do this. In other words, the physical body was attached to the great path to achieve the state of immortality. That was the ability of the path of gods and demons to cultivate to the realm of the primordial Daluo Jingxian and prove the true body of the Pangu. This was the symbol of the path of gods and demons. It was because of this that Xianyuan was surprised at this moment. Although Xianxia's current strength was infinitely close to that of the primordial Daluo Jingxian, no matter how close he wasn't the primordial Daluo Jingxian. He was always a hair's breadth. Therefore, logically speaking, Xianxia shouldn't be able to do this. In fact, only Dijiang had truly relied on his own strength to reach this step and cultivate into the fiend god Dao Lord realm. Even Feng Zhe couldn't do this without the help of external help. Therefore, it was obvious how difficult it was to do this. If Feng Zichen, the founder of the fiend god Dao, couldn't do it, how could Xing Tian do it? Could it be that his achievements in the path of gods and demons were greater than Bin Feng Zichen, the founder? Xing was Dijiang, Dijiang god divinity, Dijiang. Dijiang, Dijiang. That's not right. If Xing Tian could do this without paying a price, he would have become the primordial Daluo Jingxian long ago. How could he be trapped in the half-step primordial chaos realm like he is now? Xianyuan felt that Xing Tian's method of repairing his body must have some flaws, and it wasn't without a price. Otherwise, if there were no restrictions, he would have become a Dao long ago. This method was really the same as that of the primordial Daluo Jingxian. Thinking of this, Xianyuan waved the Xianyuan sword in his hand and activated a dazzling sword light that charged towards Xing Tian from afar. He wanted to injure Xing Tian's body again so that when he repaired his body, he could see the flaw of this method or the price he had to pay when using this method. The sword light was dazzling and powerful. It arrived in front of Xing Tian at a speed that surpassed time and space. However, it was this incomparably powerful sword that did not work. He was blocked by Xing Tian. It was the same move. In a situation where they were on guard, how could Xing Tian be hit a second time? Just now, it was Xuanyuan's sudden outburst that caught Xing Tian off guard. He was slashed by the sword light and his body was injured. Now that Xing Tian was on guard, if he was hit by Xianyuan again, he would really become a joke. Rumble! Xing Tian shook the Xingtian axe in his hand, and an extremely terrifying force, accompanied by strands of innate baleful aura, surged out from the axe and rushed straight towards the sword light. In the blink of an eye, it was completely drowned and swallowed. After shattering the sword light, there was no joy on Xing Tian's face. Instead, he became more and more manic. He raised the axe in his hand and pounced towards Xianyuan. It had always been him, Xing Tian, who suppressed others. When had it been others' turn to suppress him? It was simply unbearable. Seeing Xing Tian charging towards him, Xianyuan released sword qi to block his footsteps while retreating quickly, widening the distance between him and Xing Tian. He still remembered, he still had a chance to win in a long-range battle. He would definitely lose in a close-range battle. No matter how strong Xing Tian was, he was still in the depths of the void. He couldn't stand on the ground, so he couldn't obtain a steady stream of power from it. His power had a limit after all. But Xianyuan was different. With the blessing of the human race, his power was truly endless. In a long-range battle of attrition, Xing Tian really couldn't outlast him. One side wanted to fight in close range, while the other side wanted to fight in a long-range battle. The two sides chased each other and pulled each other in the depths of the void. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 years had passed. In other words, the two sides had been fighting for 1,000 years. And after 1,000 years, the gap between the two sides had also been revealed. It could be seen that when the two sides fought, Xing Tian could no longer wield the giant axe in his hand as smoothly as before. He was tired. After 1,000 years of high-intensity battle, even with Xing Tian's strength, he couldn't hold on any longer. Every time he waved the Xingtian axe, he felt that his arms were extremely heavy, and he needed to spend more energy. Xing Tian's mana was about to run out. At this point in the battle, the reason why Xing Tian was still able to hold on was because of his unwavering faith. As long as his faith didn't fall, Xing Tian wouldn't fall. And Xianyuan? His situation was the opposite of Xing Tian's. After 1,000 years of battle, not only was Xianyuan not tired, but he was even more energetic. Moreover, his moves were more natural than before. His mastery of magic had also increased by a large margin. Obviously, after 1,000 years of battle, Xuanyuan's strength had improved greatly. That's right. Anyone who was fed moves by an existence of the same realm for 1,000 years would improve greatly. Over the past 1,000 years, Xianyuan obviously hadn't been in vain. Under the pressure of Xing Tian, he had a more perfect grasp of his own strength. He was already able to perfectly control the huge strength that the human race's fortune had blessed him. In the past, with the blessing of the human race's fortune, although Xianyuan had strength that was not inferior to the half-step primordial chaos realm, but his own realm had only just touched the level of sage to be. With a weak body, he could control strength that was far beyond his own. It would be strange if Xianyuan could perfectly control it. In other words, although Xianyuan had the strength of a half-step primordial chaos realm, he couldn't perfectly exert this strength because his level was too low. But now, with Xiangtian's help, everything was different. After 1,000 years of high-intensity training, Xianyuan had adapted to his own strength and could perfectly control it. This also showed that the current Xianyuan was a qualified half-step primordial chaos realm master. After perfectly exerting his own strength, Xuanyuan's strength increased greatly. Although he still couldn't defeat Xiangtian in close combat, Xiangtian gradually lost to him in long-range combat. Boom, boom, boom. Because of his limitless power, every strike of Xuanyuan's was an all-out strike. What about Xiangtian? In order to resist Xuanyuan's attack, he had to use all his strength. But he didn't have Xuanyuan's endless strength. Therefore, every time he attacked with his full strength, it was a huge burden for Xiangtian. With such a high-intensity battle, Xiangtian gradually became unable to withstand it. This was the reason why Xiangtian gradually lost to Xianyuan after 1,000 years of battle. It wasn't that Xiangtian was inferior to Xianyuan. Xianyuan was really cheating. Of course, if Xiangtian was willing to draw upon the blessing of the witch race, he could also reach Xuanyuan's level. But that would violate his original intention of pushing himself to the limit. Therefore, Xiangtian didn't do it. Whoosh! Just as Xiangtian's strength was gradually weakening, Xianyuan seized the opportunity and slashed down with his sword. A huge wound was cut in Xiangtian's chest, almost cutting Xiangtian's body diagonally in half. Puchi! Dazzling divine blood sprayed out from Xiangtian's chest like a fountain, and it emanated intense fluctuations of divinity that dyed the sky red. Damn it! Enduring the pain in his chest, Xiangtian first knocked away Xuanyuan's sword with his axe, then opened his mouth and sucked hard in front of him. Suddenly, the divine blood spurting out from Xiangtian's chest stopped abruptly. Then, as if time was flowing backward, it flowed back into Xiangtian's body from the void. Whoosh! A divine light flashed, and the injuries on Xiangtian's body completely disappeared, as if he had never been injured. Of course, there was a price to pay for such a fast recovery. After the injuries disappeared, Xiangtian's aura was undoubtedly much weaker than before. Seeing this scene in the distance, Xuanyuan's heart skipped a beat. He seemed to have noticed something, but he wasn't sure. Therefore, he continued to control Xuanyuan's sword to attack Xiangtian, to bring more injuries to Xiangtian so that he could confirm his guess. Xiangtian's spiritual power was gradually depleted. His movements were no longer as smooth as before, so Xianyuan was able to find many flaws. Not long after, Xianyuan seized the opportunity and injured Xiangtian again. Xuanyuan's sword came slashing down, almost cutting Xiangtian in half. After forcing Xuanyuan's sword away with his axe, Xiangtian continued to use magic to repair his body. However, compared to before, the time he spent repairing his physical body this time was much longer than the previous time. Seeing this, Xianyuan was finally certain that the price Xiangtian had to pay to repair his physical body was his mana and origin. Every time he repaired his body, Xiangtian would consume a large amount of spiritual power and a small part of his origin. If he was at his peak, the spiritual power and origin needed to repair his body would be nothing to him. But at this moment, Xiangtian's spiritual power was almost depleted. It wouldn't be as easy to repair his body as before, unless he was willing to consume his origin. But while spiritual power was easy to obtain, origin was difficult to obtain. If one's spiritual power was depleted, they could cultivate it back at any time. But if one's origin was depleted, it would really be gone. The price was too great. This was the difference between Xiangtian and the celestial demon path master. The Tao of the celestial demon path master was imprinted in heaven and earth. If his body was destroyed, the Tao imprinted in heaven and earth would spontaneously absorb the power of heaven and earth to reform his body. This was the true definition of being immortal and indestructible. It wouldn't consume his origin or spiritual power. To kill such a person, other than committing suicide, like Dijiang, the only other way was to suppress him and refine him over a long period of time. The less spiritual power, the greater Xing Tian's flaws, and the more times he was slashed by the Xianyuan sword. In the process of recovering his physical body, Xing Tian's dermic powers were quickly depleted. But even without spiritual power, Xing Tian's body was still powerful, far from what Xianyuan could contend with. Therefore, Xianyuan didn't let down his guard just because Xing Tian's spiritual power was depleted. He still chose to continue attacking from afar. Swish, swish, swish. The Xianyuan sword slashed down quickly, leaving huge wounds on Xing Tian's body, cutting him into a bloody mess. But Xing Tian was still too strong. Every time the Xianyuan sword left, divine light would rise from his body and repair his body. That was the power of origin. Xing Tian, who had lost his spiritual power, chose to repair his body with his origin. Of course, this wasn't Xing Tian's original intention. It was a spontaneous action after his body was injured. His body didn't have intelligence, so he couldn't tell the difference between spiritual power and origin. He only knew that after being injured, he had to repair his body as soon as possible. If he had spiritual power, he would use spiritual power. If he didn't, he would use origin. Anyway, as long as he could use it, he would use it. And Xing Tian couldn't stop the actions of his body. Because this was the price he had to pay to cultivate an indestructible body. Or rather, this was the side effect of an indestructible body. He hadn't reached the realm of a divine demon Tao Lord, but he had some of the characteristics of a divine demon Tao Lord. Of course, he had to pay a price. And the predicament Xing Tian was facing now was the price he had to pay. In the blink of an eye, another 1,000 years had passed. Xianyuan had also slashed Xing Tian for 1,000 years. However, other than Xing Tian's aura becoming more dispirited, there weren't many changes. Because Xing Tian's origin was too dense. That's right. If a half-step primordial chaos expert was so easy to kill, then he wouldn't be worthy of being called the peak of the world. After slashing Xing Tian for 1,000 years, Xianyuan couldn't help but feel a little tired. Therefore, he tried to persuade him to surrender. Xing Tian, will you surrender? Even now, Xianyuan wasn't willing to kill Xing Tian. Chapter 632. Because the price of killing Xing Tian was too great. At the very least, the alliance between the witch tribe and the demon tribe, which had lasted for an eon, would be broken because of this. Surrender! Xianyuan, do you really think you've won? With a mocking smile on his face, Xing Tian replied faintly. He hadn't lost yet. So what if he didn't have magic power? He still had a strong origin and that invincible belief. This would always support him, so that he wouldn't fall. Being at a disadvantage, not only did it not dampen Xing Tian's fighting spirit, but it also stimulated the ferocity hidden in his bones. Xing Tian roared, and his body shook. Boundless innate baleful aura surged out of his body, almost engulfing everything. Whoosh whoosh, with Xing Tian as the center, the dark purple sorcerer baleful aura swept out in all directions. It was vast and mighty, eroding everything around it. Wherever it passed, everything turned into nothingness and was swallowed up. Even the powerful Xianyuan sword didn't dare to fight head-on with such a powerful baleful aura. Therefore, the moment the baleful aura spread, the Xianyuan sword retracted its sword intent and returned to Xuanyuan's hand. The innate baleful aura of the witch tribe was much stronger than the innate baleful aura of the witch tribe inherited from the chaos demon god. The baleful aura of the witch tribe could be said to be the #1 baleful aura of the primordial world. Panga's Dutian divine baleful aura was said to be the #1 baleful aura of the chaos. The baleful aura of the witch tribe, who had inherited his bloodline, could be imagined how powerful it was. In addition, when the witch tribe was born, they were tainted with the baleful aura of the heavens. Therefore, the two extremely high-level innate baleful auras merged in the body of the witch tribe, giving birth to an even more powerful innate baleful aura that belonged to the witch tribe, the baleful aura of the witch tribe. From the origin of the baleful aura of the witch tribe, one could see how powerful it was. If it was accidentally tainted by it, even the powerful Xianyuan sword wouldn't have an easy time. Although it wouldn't be destroyed, its spirituality would be greatly damaged. Therefore, Xianyuan hurriedly took back his Xianyuan sword. He didn't dare to let his sword touch the qi of sorcery, so he attacked with his sword qi. No matter how strong the evil spirit was, it had a limit. It couldn't erode the Xianyuan sword with the sword qi when it couldn't touch it, could it? If the sorcerer qi could really do that, the sorcerer clan would have unified the untainted world a long time ago. They would not have ended up dying together with the demon clan. As the baleful sorcery qi erupted, Xianxia turned the tables and broke free from the Xianyuan sword's seal. As soon as he was free, Xianxia rushed towards Xianyuan without hesitation. Since you insist, don't blame me for being heartless. Seeing Xianxia like this, Xianyuan knew that it was hard to change his mind. At that moment, he didn't hesitate any longer. He was determined to kill Xianxia. If he could kill them, then he would. If he couldn't kill him, then he would suppress him. Sword of humanity, kill. Xianyuan made up his mind. He raised the Xianyuan sword in his hand and swung it down in the direction of Xianxia. Rumble. In the sky above the river of destiny, the fate of the human clan vibrated. Boundless power descended and blessed the Xianyuan sword. With this help, the power of the Xianyuan sword instantly soared. Endless radiance of humanity bloomed. It was incomparably dazzling. It bloomed from the Xianyuan sword and turned into a torch. It burned fiercely and ignited the sword light. Whoosh! A beam of sword light that was surrounded by torch flame shot out from the Xianyuan sword and slashed towards Xianxia in a mighty manner. As the torch burned, one could see the shadows of countless races appearing. They were creating various civilizations and deducing great power. Boom! The torch boiled and deduced the power of civilization. It was incomparably powerful and was added to the sword light. It made the sword light look like a torrent of humanity. It surged forward and was unstoppable. Powerful, incomparably powerful. Xuanyuan's sword. What he slashed out was not sword light, but civilization. This was the history of civilization formed by countless civilizations. What he represented was the human Tao. This was a sword of humanity. The dazzling light of humanity erupted. It was like the sun, illuminating the past, present, and future. It was so dazzling that the powerful beings who were watching the battle couldn't help but squint their eyes. It seemed that, even as powerful as them, they couldn't look directly at the brilliance of humanity. The power of humanity was beyond imagination. Bang! In the distant nether realm, where the 6 paths of reincarnation were. After seeing the elegance of this sword strike, even the powerful goddess Hood couldn't help but change her expression and stand up from the futon. The power of Xuanyuan's sword strike, with the support of the light of humanity, could pose a threat to her, let alone Xianxia. Perhaps, this sword strike could seriously injure Xianxia, or even kill him. The power of this sword strike had already reached the level of primordial chaos. Rumble! The sword light arrived with a loud bang and drowned Xianxia in the blink of an eye. Sweet, sweet. Accompanied by the light of humanity, the torch burned to its heart's content and devoured Xianxia entirely. It wanted to use the power of humanity to completely purify him and completely disappear into the primordial world. The destruction of humanity. This was the true destruction of humanity. However, Xianyuan had a trump card that could injure primordial chaos. However, Xianxia was able to live from ancient times until now and survive countless years without falling. The trump card in his hand might not be weak. Xianxia was surrounded by the torch, but he didn't show the slightest fear. He only gripped the heaven-punishing axe in his hand even harder. Split open the heavens. Xianxia raised the heaven-punishing axe in his hand with all his might. He roared and slashed horizontally in front of him. Rumble! In an instant, endless brilliance, it bloomed from the heaven-punishing axe. The brilliance was like the light of the creation of heaven and earth. It was even more resplendent and dazzling than the light of humanity. Moreover, as the brilliance circulated, it contained endless mysteries. Billions of great Tao were born and destroyed within it, as if it was describing the profundity of the creation of heaven and earth. Puchi. The brilliance of the brilliance was also beyond imagination. As soon as it appeared, it pierced through the light of humanity and swept away the raging torch, causing the sword light to be pushed back continuously. This was the power of splitting open the heavens. Without a doubt, the brilliance that bloomed from the heaven-punishing axe was the brilliance emitted by the power of splitting open the heavens. Only the power of splitting open the heavens and earth could suppress the light of humanity. The light of humanity was strong enough, wasn't it? When it appeared, it was so dazzling that the great masters narrowed their eyes. However, it was obvious that the power of splitting open the heavens was even more domineering. Facing it, the great masters couldn't even open their eyes. They would feel a burning sensation, as if it was going to burn their eyes. Even their divine senses, under the illumination of the light of splitting open the heavens, it was also like melting ice and snow, quickly dissipating into thin air. As a high-grade innate spirit treasure formed from the fragments of Panga's axe, the heaven-punishing axe naturally had a part of the mark of splitting open the heavens. And this was Xianxia's greatest trump card. Once the power of splitting open the heavens was used, unless the opponent had overwhelming strength, they would definitely be defeated by Xianxia. This was a power that could reverse the universe. Once it was used, the situation immediately changed. Isn't it enough? Then let's be a little stronger. In the distant void, Xianyuan saw Xianxia use the power of splitting open the heavens to force back the mighty power of humanity. Although he was a little surprised, he did not feel fear. Because he could still be stronger. The next attack would be the one that would decide the outcome of the battle. One strike to determine the outcome. If Xianxia could block it, then Xianyuan would really have no more moves. After making up his mind, Xianyuan no longer held back. He was about to use his life-risking move to carry out the final blow. Then, he calmed his mind and quickly crossed the endless space and time. He entered the mysterious long river of destiny and merged with the human race's destiny. Then, Xianyuan followed the invisible connection and connected with the phoenix that represented the destiny of the bird race in the sky above the long river of destiny. Screech! The phoenix felt it and flapped its wings and let out a long cry. Its sound shook the entire long river of destiny. Boom! In the next moment, an extremely huge and ancient power crossed the endless space and time and blessed the Xianyuan sword in Xuanyuan's hand. Human sacred phoenix, slash. In a trance, Xianyuan came back to his senses. He subconsciously raised the Xianyuan sword in his hand and slashed out the strongest sword strike he had ever cultivated. Screech! Under the brilliance of the Xianyuan sword, the long cry of the phoenix resounded throughout the primitive world, alarming countless great existences. Rumble! Dazzling seven-colored light bloomed from the Xianyuan sword as if it was burning. This is Nirvana's sacred fire. Ancestor Phoenix's innate ability. Whoosh! As the Nirvana sacred fire twisted, a huge phoenix that was completely composed of seven-colored flames flew out of the Xianyuan sword. It carried the power of the bird race's destiny and flew toward Xianxia. Boom! On the other side, the human sacred fire that was completely suppressed by the power of split the heavens suddenly received the help of the seven-colored phoenix. Its power immediately surged and directly suppressed the power of split the heavens. In an instant, the situation changed again. The power of split the heavens was suppressed. Under the suppression of the human sacred fire, it rapidly shrank and barely formed a defensive barrier to protect Xianxia. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh! Ikenhua burned fiercely and emitted endless heat that surged toward Xianxia, who was enveloped by the power of split the heavens. For a moment, under the attack of Xinhua, The defensive barrier formed by the power of Split the Heavens immediately became dangerous. Xianxia's axe desperately shone brilliantly to maintain the defensive barrier. However, from his trembling axe, it could be seen that he could not hold on for long. Xianxia was about to lose. Under the joint attack of the human sacred fire and the phoenix sacred fire, he might really die. Of course, the power of Split the Heavens could not resist the power of the human sacred fire. This did not mean that the power of Split the Heavens was weak, but that Xianxia's axe could not. After all, it was not the main body of Xianxia's axe. The mark of Split the Heavens obtained by Xianxia's axe was limited. Therefore, the power of Split the Heavens that he could unleash was not much. This also led to Xianxia being suppressed by Xianyuan. Am I going to lose? No, I can't lose. I haven't broken the limit yet. How can I lose now? Moreover, if I lose and am killed by Xianyuan, then how will the sorcerer race and the human race get along in the future? In a trance, Xianxian thought of the situation after his failure and could not help but shiver. He completely woke up. He could not lose. Even if it was not for himself, but for the sorcerer race and the human race, he could still lose. I'm unwilling. Thinking of the terrifying future, Xianxian did not allow himself to fail. Therefore, he stood up again. That was the power of faith. The unwavering faith in his heart brought him great strength, allowing him to stand up again. In Xianxian's heart, his faith completely materialized, turning into the light of faith that appeared and swept away the surging fire. A miracle happened at this moment. The moment the light of faith appeared, Xianxian's bloodline and the Xianxian axe in his hand gradually resonated. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The power of Split the Heavens that surged out from the Xianxian axe no longer spread out. Instead, it surged into Xianxian's bloodline. Thump, 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 thump. A huge heartbeat sounded from Xianxian's chest. It was as if it resonated with the world. Every time it vibrated, it could echo with the world. Strength. Unparalleled strength emerged from Xianxian's heart and flowed to all parts of his body along with his blood, soothing the fatigue of his body. At this moment, Xianxian broke his own limit. Awakened the Pangu bloodline in his body. The ancient and great bloodline awakened in Xianxian's body, bringing him a huge amount of strength and causing him to undergo a transformation. A transformation towards primordial Daluo Jingxian. In the battle with Xianyuan, Xianxian saw the hope of advancing to primordial Daluo Jingxian. But this was not enough. Hope, just hope. Whether it could be realized or not was still unknown. Therefore, he needed a hearty battle to vent the huge strength in his body and verify his own path so that he could speed up the process of his transformation. And the opponent that Xianxian chose to fight was naturally Xianyuan. Break! With a deep roar, Xianxian unleashed the unparalleled power within his body. Immediately, the world wailed incessantly, the great Tao laws trembled incessantly, as if they had encountered an extremely terrifying existence. Under this majestic strength, the brilliance of the human path that drowned Xianxian completely disappeared in an instant. Although the power of the human path was one of the three strongest supreme powers in the primordial world and had the ability to suppress everything. However, Pangu's strength could even break through the chaos. It was clearly beyond the scope of heaven and earth. In this way, under the same conditions, how could the power of the human path fight against Pangu's strength? He was completely suppressed and beaten up. Okay, Xianyuan, you've beaten me for so long. Now it's my turn to attack. With a loud laugh, Xianxian pounced on Xianyuan and fought with him. This time, facing Xianxian who had awakened Pangu's bloodline, Xianyuan was no match for him at all. His strength had been restrained by Xianxian from the beginning to the end. How could he fight? Therefore, Xianyuan was completely suppressed by Xianxian. Soon, he was beaten black and blue. Only Xianyuan had the blessing of the human race. His true spirit was eternally solid. No matter how much he was injured, his foundation would not be damaged. Otherwise, with Xianxian's fighting style, he would have been broken long ago. Too slow. After Xianxia awakened, Xianyuan was no match for him at all. In that case, how can I give him enough pressure to help him speed up the time of his transformation? Chapter 633. Forget it. Why don't I lend him a hand? It's time for this show to come to an end. On the Emperor's Star, Feng Zichen shook his head and decided to intervene in this battle to put a perfect end to it. Zichen's sword, go. With a thought, Feng Zichen raised his hand. Suddenly, boundless starlight gathered and turned into a purple transparent longsword. It broke through layers of void and flew towards Xianyuan. Sword Dao condensed, starlight formed a body. This was the shadow of the Zichen sword, and also the supreme sword Dao magic of the ancestor of the Xiantian sword Dao. This sword was invincible under the primordial chaos. Shua. During the battle between Xianyuan and Xiantian, the shadow of the Zichen sword quietly came and fell into the Xianyuan sword in Xuanyuan's hand and disappeared. Boom. Immediately, Xianyuan felt that the Xianyuan sword in his hand was different. Strong, too strong. Holding him, it was as if he had held the entire Xiantian sword Dao and could easily destroy the world. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Almost subconsciously, Xianyuan gently waved the Xianyuan sword in his hand. Then a surprising scene happened. An incomparably magnificent sword light bloomed from the Xianyuan sword. It was like the trajectory of the great Dao, sweeping towards Xiantian in a mighty manner. Wherever the sword light passed, everything turned into nothingness. Seeing the sword light coming, Xiantian raised his axe to meet it. Boom. Following that, a loud explosion was heard. The might of that sword strike had actually forced Xiantian back. As soon as the sword light came into contact with the Xiantian axe, Xiantian felt an unparalleled power coming from the Xiantian axe, forcing him to retreat uncontrollably. Boom, 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 a powerful force burst forth, causing Xiantian to fall back. His feet crushed everything as he fell, leaving deep marks in the void. After a long while, only then did Xiantian stop retreating. Drip, 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 crimson blood dripped from Xiantian's hand, drop by drop. His thumb and index fingers split open. Xuanyuan's sword not only forced Xiantian back, but also split his thumb and index finger. How could this be? This is definitely not Xuanyuan's power. Xiantian was stunned as he stared blankly at his bleeding hand. Someone had interfered in the battle between him and Xianyuan. Otherwise, Xianyuan wouldn't have been able to force him back, let alone injure him. After awakening Pangu's bloodline, Xiantian was confident that he could suppress Xianyuan. In fact, this was indeed the case. Before Feng Zichen made his move, Xianyuan had been suppressed by Xiantian, who had awakened Pangu's bloodline. Give him a stab. Feng Zichen's voice suddenly rang in Xuanyuan's ears. What? At first, Xianyuan was stunned, but soon he realized who was talking to him. Xianyuan understands. Taking a deep breath, Xianyuan raised his Xianyuan sword and pointed it at Xiantian. Not good. On the other side, the moment Xianyuan raised his sword, Xiantian's heart suddenly hung in the air. He felt a strong sense of crisis in his heart, as if his life was in danger. At this time, he knew that Xuanyuan's next sword would be very strong. If he couldn't block it, it would be enough to bring him the danger of death. Therefore, the best way to resist this sword was to avoid it. However, with Xiantian's pride, how could he allow himself to avoid it? No matter what, he had to block this sword, because Xiantian had a faint premonition that this sword was the sword that he would use to achieve the Tao. If he couldn't block it, everything would be over. If he blocked it, the primordial chaos Tao fruit was right in front of him. In the future, his path to becoming the primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian would be smooth. For this sword, he had to block it. Block it at all costs. Huff. Taking a few deep breaths, Xiantian clenched the Xiantian axe in his hand and adjusted his state to the peak to deal with the next critical sword. Fellow Xiantian, the war has been going on for thousands of years. It's time to end this ridiculous war. As he spoke, Xianyuan raised the Xianyuan sword high and swung it fiercely at Xingtian. Shua! A sword light flashed and suddenly arrived in front of Xingtian at a speed that surpassed time and space. Before he could react, it directly slashed down. After a flash of blood, Xingtian's head was separated from his body and thrown high into the air, beheading with a single sword. Xuanyuan's sword directly cut off Xingtian's head. Too fast. It was really too fast. This sword ignored time and distance. As soon as it was released, it arrived in front of Xingtian. Without giving him any time to react, it beheaded him. It could be said to be extremely straightforward. At Xingtian's level of strength, not to mention his head being cut off, even if his entire body was smashed into pieces, it wouldn't endanger his life. Therefore, although Xingtian's head was cut off, he didn't die and was still alive and well. A loud voice came from Xingtian's body, trying to summon back the head that had been cut off by Xianyuan to repair his body. But soon he was disappointed, because no matter what method Xingtian used, he couldn't summon back the head that had been cut off. It was as if as the head was separated from the body, the connection between the two was completely cut off. He had no head. And this wasn't the most serious thing. Just as Xingtian was trying to summon his head, he suddenly realized that there was a strange power quietly growing in his wound. Moreover, this strange power was slowly spreading to all parts of his body with his wound as the starting point. This is? In surprise, Xingtian suddenly felt that something was wrong. The target of this strange power was the Pangu bloodline in his body. That power was as black as ink and extremely domineering. With an aura that hated everything, it pounced straight at the Pangu bloodline, wanting to destroy it. Ha! Destroy! Everything related to Pangu shouldn't exist in this world. In a trance, the whisper of the demon god sounded in Xingtian's ears, as if he was describing his unwillingness. Chaos demon god. That strange power originated from the chaos demon god. The disgust that came from the depths of his bloodline immediately made Xingtian understand the origin of the strange power in his body. The power that belonged to the chaos demon god. That's right, the sword that Feng Zichen slashed out with Xianyuan's hand contained the power that belonged to the chaos demon god. In this world, the one who hated Pangu the most was the chaos demon god. Similarly, the one that Pangu feared the most was the chaos demon god. Because of their hostile relationship, the power of the chaos demon god became the power that could stimulate Pangu's power the most. Feng Zichen used the power of the chaos demon god to kill Xingtian in order to further stimulate the Pangu bloodline in his body so as to accelerate his transformation process. Buzz, as expected, after sensing the power of the chaos demon god, the Pangu bloodline in Xingtian's body immediately boiled. Countless mysterious runes gushed out from the depths of his bloodline and swept towards the surging power of the chaos demon god. Just like that, the two supreme powers began to battle with Xingtian's body as the battlefield. Boom, boom, boom. One could see that on Xingtian's headless body, two rays of brilliance suddenly rose up. One was holy and majestic, and the other was evil and strange. They intertwined with each other. Wherever the strange power passed, Xingtian's body seemed to have suffered great damage and began to disintegrate and decay. However, as soon as Xingtian's body showed signs of decay, the holy power immediately rushed over and repaired his body. This process often contained great fortune, which allowed Xingtian's body to be fully tempered and undergo a drastic transformation. When this transformation reached a certain limit, Xingtian suddenly roared and erupted with amazing power. Then, a miraculous change happened. Xingtian completely abandoned his head and used his breasts as his eyes and navel as his mouth. He waved the Xingtian axe in his hand and brazenly charged towards Xianyuan. Die! Crazy! Under the influence of the power of the chaos demon god, Xingtian temporarily lost his mind and became extremely crazy. His heart was filled with the desire to destroy everything around him. Bang! The axe chopped down, the tyrannical power wantonly rushed out. It tore through space and shattered the rules of heaven and earth. Clang! Xianyuan raised his sword and blocked Xingtian's axe. Although Xianxia's strength was much stronger than before, because he had lost his mind, he was not as threatening as before. That was because his attack had no skill to speak of. It was very easy to dodge. But even so, Xianyuan could not avoid it. It was because Xiangtian, who was stronger, had a greater destructive power to the surroundings. If Xianyuan dodged Xiangtian's attack, then his attack would hit the depths of the void and bring a great disaster to the common people. How could Xianyuan just stand by and watch the innocent people suffer? Therefore, he could only step forward and try his best to resist Xiangtian. Fortunately, Xianyuan was not fighting alone. Behind him, Feng Zichen was helping him. In order to give Xianyuan the power to resist Xiangtian, Feng Zichen gave him the authority of the innate way of the sword so that he could mobilize the power of the innate way of the sword. After countless years of precipitation, the innate way of the sword was no longer as weak as when it was first born. It had long penetrated into all parts of the untainted land and became like the other innate ways of the sword, able to coexist with the origin of heaven and earth. If the innate way of the sword erupted, its power would definitely be comparable to the realm above the origin. But then, the price would be too great, and it would cause irreversible damage to the innate way of the sword. Therefore, unless it was the most desperate moment, Feng Zichen would never use such means. Now, giving Xianyuan a part of the authority was enough to give him the power to resist Xiangtian. In addition, in order to help Xiangtian suppress the power of the demon god in his body, Xianyuan took out the innate treasure that he had never used in the previous battle, the People Dao Emperor's seal. Previously, because he was not sure about the influence of Pangu's bloodline on the Pangu's fingerbone, Xianyuan did not dare to take out this treasure for fear of being counterattacked by the other party. But now, at this moment, Xianyuan was not a fool. He naturally guessed the purpose of Xiangtian's challenge to him. Without hesitation, he directly took out the innate treasure, the People Dao Emperor's seal, and evolved the Pangu's fingerbone to help Xiangtian suppress the power of the demon god of chaos in his body. As for being used by Xiangtian, would Xianyuan be angry? To be honest, he was not. Because if it were him, he would not tell the other party directly if he wanted to use others to break through the realm. It was precisely because he did not know that he would kill him, so that the effect of this method would be maximized. If he knew in advance, he would inevitably hold back when he attacked, and he would not be able to achieve his goal. Therefore, he could not tell the other party in advance. Of course, an apology after the event was inevitable. Moreover, there was another reason why Xianyuan was not angry. The joy of the harvest was greater than the anger in his heart. After this battle, his strength would be completely stabilized, and he would officially become the top great magician of the untainted world. He would also lay a firm foundation for the future. The harvest could not be said to be small. So, why would Xianyuan be angry? Boom. The People Dao Emperor's seal was indeed a treasure made by Pangu's fingerbone. Its suppression of the power of the demon god of chaos could be said to be the other party's nemesis. Under its suppression, the power of the demon god of chaos in Xiangtian's body gradually calmed down. Xiangtian also calmed down and stayed motionless in the void, waiting for the end of the change. Well, when the power of the demon god of chaos in Xiangtian's body was completely refined by Pangu's bloodline, he would regain his intelligence and lay a supreme foundation for the Tao. After that, he would only need to undergo endless years of transformation. Xiangtian would naturally be able to attain the Tao and advance to the primordial Daluo Jingxian. After this battle, Xiangtian already had the capital to advance to the primordial chaos. What he lacked now was nothing more than maturity. And this was the only thing that could not be rushed. It would take a long time to polish it. But, no matter what, Xiangtian's advancement to the primordial Daluo Jingxian was already a foregone conclusion. The only thing left was to wait. Sigh. How enviable! After Empress Hutu and ancestral witch Dijiang, the witch race is about to welcome the third primordial Daluo Jingxian. How enviable! I wonder when the real primordial Daluo Jingxian will be born in the human race. Looking at Xiangtian, who was undergoing a transformation, Xianyuan said enviously, "Did the human race have any primordial chaos experts?" Of course, there was more than one. But so what? The so-called primordial Daluo Jingxian of the human race was just a pseudo-primordial Daluo Jingxian that relied on the karmic position of heaven and earth. They couldn't be independent at all. How could they be called carefree and free? What Xianyuan yearned for was the primordial Daluo Jingxian that transcended heaven and earth and obtained great freedom and freedom. Not the 3 emperors and 3 quasi-saints who couldn't disobey the orders of the heavenly Tao. If one day the heavenly Tao wanted to destroy the human race, then the 3 emperors wouldn't even have the strength to resist. However, the primordial Daluo Jingxian was different. They transcended heaven and earth and drifted outside the long river of time and space. They could resist the heavenly Tao to a certain extent. In fact, they could ignore the orders of the heavenly Tao. At most, after angering the heavenly Tao, they could hide in the chaos outside the realm. In this way, what could the heavenly Tao do to them? No matter how strong the heavenly Tao was, it couldn't reach the chaos outside the realm. It could be said that the one the heavenly Tao disliked the most and even hated the most was the primordial Daluo Jingxian, because they were beyond the control of the heavenly Tao. And this was what the heavenly Tao couldn't accept the most. Chapter 634. In the primordial world, only the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian was the foundation of a clan leader's prosperity. As long as the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian appeared in the clan, then the clan would be able to exist forever. Even if the calamity descended, the epic changed, and the great world surged, as long as the primordial world was not completely destroyed, then the clan would never be in danger of being exterminated. Just like the shaman and demon clans, and the 3 Khanate clans, even if they were now in decline, who would dare to destroy them? No one dared to do it, because, behind them, there was the existence of the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. Even the fallen primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian was still the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. He had a very powerful deterrent force, enough to protect a clan, so that no one dared to exterminate the clan. Therefore, although the shaman and demon clans, and even the 3 Khanate clans had declined, they had not been exterminated. In fact, the so-called decline was only temporary. Once they found an opportunity, they would quickly rise. And this was the confidence of having the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. Xianyuan was so eager to have a primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian of the human race. The human race seemed to be prosperous, but there were hidden dangers. The so-called prosperity was just an illusion created by the saints according to the will of the heavenly Tao. This was completely fake and had no foundation. It was like a bubble that would burst at a touch. If one day, the heavenly Tao no longer supported the human race, then, in an instant, the human race would be beaten back to its original state and become a feast for the great magicians. However, if the human race had the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian, then everything would be different. This meant that the human race had the qualifications to get rid of the heavenly Tao. Transcending heaven and earth represented infinite possibilities. Right now, we can only place our hopes on Zichen. He is the #1 genius of the human clan, the #1 expert of the human clan, and the existence closest to the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. Among the humans, only he is most likely to become the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. If he can't break through, then the human race. Xianyuan thought of Feng Zichen. He believed that Feng Zichen was the hope of the human race. After all, his series of achievements were too dazzling. Even the glory of the saints was overshadowed by him. If such a person couldn't achieve the great path, then Xianyuan really couldn't think of anyone who could achieve the great path and transcend the world. A saint. 2 Primordial Chaos Daluo Jingxian. The sorcerer tribe is such a heaven-defying race. Xianyuan raised his head and looked at Xingtian. He couldn't help but feel jealous. How enviable! One sage was enough to suppress the untainted land, but in addition to the sage, the Wu tribe also had 2 Daluo Jingxian of the primordial chaos. How could they not be jealous? They were simply too strong, of course. Xianyuan didn't know the situation of the ancestor of Sorcerer Xianming. If he knew, he would be even more envious. The 12 temples were not cultivated for nothing. They stood on the untainted land, gathering the true spirit for the fallen ancestor of Sorcerer and accumulating the origin. But this didn't mean that the living ancestor of Sorcerer couldn't benefit from it. Because the ancestor of Sorcerer Xianming hadn't fallen, the origin gathered in the temple that belonged to him would naturally gather in his body to enhance his strength. It could be said that in the future, even if the ancestor of Sorcerer Xianming didn't have to do anything, the temple itself could help him cultivate and push him all the way to the level of the primordial Daluo Jingxian. The unique advantage of the 12 ancestors of Sorcerer Xianming was that they existed with the origin of the earth. This was an opportunity that outsiders couldn't envy. With the help of the Xianming Temple, the ancestor of Sorcerer Xianming didn't have to worry about not being able to break through the primordial Daluo Jingxian. This was a secret, and not many people knew about it. Otherwise, if it spread out, it would attract a large number of people's envy. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, 3,000 years had passed. In other words, 3,000 years had passed since Xing Tian's transformation. After 3,000 years of transformation, Xing Tian had reached a critical juncture. He was enveloped in a sacred radiance, and countless mysterious runes were constantly being born and destroyed. They seemed to be describing the principles of heaven and earth, mysterious and unfathomable. This was the manifestation of Pangu's bloodline in Xing Tian's body being pushed to the limit. With the support of the human Dao Emperor's seal, the power of Pangu's bloodline had been raised to the greatest extent, overshadowing the power of the Chaos Demon God in one fell swoop. Now that it had been completely suppressed, it was waiting to slowly erase it. Under the suppression of Pangu's bloodline, the power of the Chaos Demon God no longer had the ability to stir up trouble. Without the interference of the power of the Chaos Demon God, the connection between Xing Tian's body and head began to gradually recover. Waves of mysterious power were emitted from Xing Tian's neck, trying to recall the severed head. Buzz, buzz, buzz. In the distance, Xing Tian's head, which had fallen into silence since it was severed by Xuanyuan's sword, finally reacted under the call of Xing Tian's body. It trembled gently. Head, head, head. After sensing the aura of the giant head, Xing Tian called out almost instinctively. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Under the call of Xing Tian's body, Xing Tian's head trembled even more violently. It slowly floated up from the air and flew shakily toward Xing Tian's body, wanting to reunite with him. Chaos as one complete great Tao. When Xing Tian's head reunited with his body, he would obtain some kind of completion, and his consciousness would wake up. At that time, Xianyuan would have nothing to do, and he could leave. Next, it would be Xing Tian's own business. He would return to Panga's palace and enter the deepest level of enlightenment to complete the final transformation and break through to become Chaos Daluo Jingxian. In this battle, Xianyuan had been tempered. Xing Tian had seen the path ahead and obtained the opportunity to attain the Dao. Everything was so perfect, completely in line with Feng Zichen and Hudu's plan. As long as Xing Tian's head returned to its original position, this matter would be perfectly concluded. But there were still flaws in the way of the heavens, let alone in this world. In the world, there was nothing perfect at all. Therefore, an accident happened. Just as Xing Tian's head was about to fly back to his body, an accident happened. An inexplicable power was born from the void. It was powerful and terrifying as it attacked Xing Tian's head. Caught off guard, Xing Tian's head, which was suspended in midair, was directly hit. With a bang, a terrifying power erupted. Xing Tian's head was smashed into powder by this power on the spot, turning into a rain of blood that fell from the sky. But this was not the end. After shattering Xing Tian's head, the terrifying power did not dissipate. Instead, it spread out in the void and swept towards Xing Tian's head, turning into a rain of blood that filled the sky. From the looks of it, it wanted to completely obliterate it to cut off the possibility of Xing Tian's head reforming. Steady, accurate, and ruthless. It had to be said that the person who made the move had really seized a good opportunity. Seeing that the great merit was about to be achieved, Feng Zichen and the others could not help but let down their guard. That person had made a move at this time. How could he not succeed in one fell swoop? Although shattering and obliterating Xing Tian's head could not stop Xing Tian from advancing to primordial Daluo Jingxian, it could delay the time for his breakthrough. Primordial chaos was about perfection. If the head was shattered and the body was incomplete, wouldn't it lose its perfection? Indeed, with Xing Tian's ability, after removing the power of the Chaos Demon God, he could regenerate a new head at any time. However, how could a new head be compared to the head that had been polished for countless years? It would take a long time to get used to it before it could achieve harmony with the original body. And during this period of time, wouldn't it be delayed? The time for him to attain the Tao would naturally be delayed for a period of time. And the longer it took, the more variables there would be. Who knew what would happen to Xing Tian during that period of time? Therefore, the person who made the move in the dark could be said to be vicious. Even if I can't stop you, I will disgust you to death. In the face of the sudden change, before Xianyuan could react, two explosive voices suddenly sounded in the sky and the earth at almost the same time. Thief, how dare you? Before the two voices fell, boundless star power hung down from the starry sky above the sky, turning into countless sharp swords that fell into the depths of the void like a rainstorm. At the same time, in the underworld below the ground, the power of reincarnation surged out, emitting a wave that could destroy everything, sweeping towards the power that wanted to destroy Xing Tian's head. These two people were naturally Feng Zichen and Hu. When they saw that someone had plotted against Xing Tian, the anger in their hearts could be imagined. Especially, they were interrupted at the happiest moment. That feeling of being neither up nor down was like a fishbone stuck in their throats, causing the anger in their hearts to be especially blazing, almost increasing exponentially. Therefore, without hesitation, they attacked as fast as they could. One attacked from the sky. One attacked from the ground. One attacked the depths of the void to block the attacker's retreat. One of them charged to Xing Tian's side to protect his head. Rumble. Reincarnation was impermanent, cyclical, and indeterminate. Its creation was endless, and its power was endless. Almost as soon as it appeared, it destroyed the inexplicable power that was attacking Xing Tian's head. However, although Hutu attacked quickly, she was still one step slower than the attacker. And it was this one-step difference that caused a portion of the blood rain that Xing Tian's head had turned into to be destroyed. About 3 to 4 layers. In this way, although Xing Tian's head was saved, it was inevitable that Xing Tian's head would be greatly damaged and would need a period of time to recuperate. Logically speaking, after suffering such a heavy injury, Xing Tian's breakthrough would inevitably be delayed. However, the power of reincarnation was indeed one of the most powerful forces in the primordial world. Its power was strange and far beyond imagination. Amnesty. Hudu's clear and cold voice suddenly resounded through space. As soon as she finished speaking, she saw the surging power of reincarnation. It suddenly turned. In an instant, time and space were distorted. The part of Xing Tian's head that had been destroyed earlier actually reappeared in the void. This was the greatness of the power of reincarnation. It distorted time and space, messing up the past, present, and future. Once it exerted its strength, it forcefully snatched back the part of Xing Tian's head that had been completely destroyed from the past. Hudu's side was shocking, and Feng Zichen's side was not bad. A rain of swords fell from the sky, and in an instant, the void was stabbed into pieces, completely destroyed, and turned into a state of nothingness. It was also at this moment that a strange shadow escaped from the void in a sorry state. And the moment this strange shadow appeared from the void, Feng Zichen's eyes had already locked onto it on the Emperor Star. One could see that at this moment, Feng Zichen's eyes had completely turned purple gold. This was the state of the heavenly Tao Divine Eye when it was fully opened. He was using this method to spy on the true identity of the strange shadow, so that he could find it and kill it completely to vent the anger in his heart and intimidate some people with ulterior motives. External incarnation? That's right. How can I let myself do such a dirty thing? However, it doesn't matter. When I capture your external incarnation, I'm not afraid that I won't know your true origin. On the Emperor's star, Feng Zichen frowned, but he could see the origin of the strange shadow. It was the external incarnation of a powerful existence. Thinking about it, this was normal. Once this kind of thing was done, it was obvious that he would offend the Hutu to death. In this way, if his true identity was exposed, he would definitely be hunted down by the Hutu to death. No one would be able to find a reason to plead for mercy. The external incarnation became the best cover. Why did he have to refine an external incarnation? Wasn't it used to take the blame for the original body at the critical moment? Just like the temporary workers in the later generations, if there was a problem, it would be the external incarnation, temporary worker, that did it. It had nothing to do with the original body, official employee. Your Majesty Emperor Ziwei, your strength is indeed strong enough, not much inferior to a saint. It's easy to defeat the poor Wei. But it's not that easy to capture the poor Wei. After hearing Feng Zichen's words, the strange shadow laughed and replied fearlessly. Then let's give it a try. Let me witness what you are capable of. In this regard, Feng Zichen only smiled faintly. He directly reached out his hand and pressed it toward him from afar, wanting to suppress him in one fell swoop. At the same time, in order to prevent the shadow from self-destructing, Feng Zichen also secretly activated the Hongmeng purple clock. When it showed signs of self-destruction or self-destruction, he would activate the Hongmeng Daozhong and freeze time and space. Although he was prepared in this way, in Feng Zichen's heart, he did not think that the other party would self-destruct. At most, he would directly kill himself when he saw that things were not going well. As for why Feng Zichen thought so, there was a reason. The wizard clan had dominated the primordial world for many years and had offended more than one or two powerful beings. Instead, there were dozens or hundreds of them. When the wizard clan was strong, these powerful beings could not do anything to them. But now, the wizard clan had declined. Under such circumstances, how could they allow the wizard clan to have another primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian and rise again? Therefore, they would stop Xing Tian from achieving the Dao so that they could cut off the hope of the wizard clan rising. Moreover, these great divine ability masters who had a grudge against the Magi were not the only ones who could not bear to see the Magi rise. You're tuning in to the Wandering Hero YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.